Over there too?
Ma'am, it's worse than I can ever tell you. Every single day.
This is just from this morning. Crazy.
You know, I hear it
Like
too.
school down.
Yeah, I don't know if it's
Only here. Right here.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. Good to see you. Today, this is our Flagler County Board of County Commissioners Workshop. It is Monday, October 24, 2024. It is 1:01 p.m. If I could have everybody stand for the pledge, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible.
Thank you. And at this time, we take a brief moment of silence. This is for individual prayer, reflection, or meditation. We take this time to honor and remember our first responders and the men and women in our military who keep us safe and protect our freedoms at home and abroad. All right, thank you very much. Again, welcome. Glad to see everybody here today. We've got basically three things to accomplish today. We're going to review our beach management plan. We are going to review issues with the airport and the noise abatement portal. Then we'll finish up with legislative priority discussion. So at this time, we will go ahead and start with our beach management plan update. And Ms. Petito, are you going to lead us with that?
I will, thank
Great,
you.
thank you.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you all for being here and allowing us, thank you, to present an update of Flagler County's beach management plan. I wanted to start by saying that we value the collaboration, appreciate the partnership along the way, especially with the residents on the barrier island. Over the past few months, we've worked hard on public engagement and to share where we are on the county's beach management plan. I feel that the outreach was a success and that we were able to gather some valuable input from the community on a path moving forward. So I've got a lot of information to cover, so we'll go ahead and get started. So here's a look at today's agenda and the topics that we're going to be covering. I've got a lot of information, but I did leave some time at the end for any questions and answers you have. But we're going to talk about the beach management plan overview and provide an update of where we're at with that. We're going to go over the public survey results and talk about a local funding strategy for the project. We're going to talk about consideration of the creation of a municipal service benefit unit, or MSBU, on the barrier island within the unincorporated Flagler County area. And then we'll, again, end up with some time at the end to go over any questions that you guys may have, or the public. So as part of the beach management plan, the county had identified 4 beach dune renourishment reaches, sections of the beach along restoration and management efforts would be pursued. So the reaches were identified considering the physical characteristics of the beach and dune, as well as the different funding opportunities that vary among the individual reaches, along with some of the environmental conditions, because not every section of the beach is exactly the same. So the county has, working with our consultant, our engineering consultant, we've established 4 distinct reaches. And we've got some existing or current projects that were completed, as well as some future project needs, schedule, and some regulatory constraints with each of them. I did provide you, as part of your backup, kind of a summary It's a recap sheet of, I think it was last updated on September 10th or 11th. But I did give that, it's got a lot more detail on each individual reach that I'm not going to go over right now, but if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer it. So here's a look at two of the existing permits that required modifications. The first one is for Reach 2, which is the county permit that covers dune and beach restoration work up to Beverly Beach. However, it did need to be modified to include dredging, and we actually extended it to be just north of Arn Park. The scope and proposal was provided by our consultant, Olson Associates. The funding for this project is already established, and our application is already being reviewed at FDEP. We anticipate that the construction will start on this somewhere around the spring of next year, probably around the April 2025 timeframe. We are working with Hammock Dunes and Ocean Hammock to pursue a permit modification for work in their prospective area, which includes offshore sand from the county's dredge project, so that we can build back that dune through either stockpile and mechanical handling, or if we're able to actually do a dredge up there. The work on that is something that needs to have some additional work on it. Recently, we did advertise for a engineering consultant for finishing the beach management plan. I know we'd been with Olson Associates for a number of years. It was time for us to go back out. So we are moving forward with consideration of a contract for engineering services that will take this permit and will modify the scope and the work so that we can get that advertised. So this will at some point come back to the board for further board action and to establish the funding. We anticipate, and again, this is really just an estimate of time frame, but probably somewhere between 2 to 3 years from today, and that includes bringing on a new consultant, modifying the permit, and actually doing the work. So you've seen this before. This was the probable cost development that had been prepared for us through Olson Associates. This was looking at the initial project volume along the 11.6 miles, which is the northern section of the coast. As you know, we have 18.8 or 18 point, I think it's 18.8 miles of shoreline. This was a look at the northern end, primarily out of the 11.6 miles. It's largely the unincorporated area. We know that we have approximately 10 acres of rocks that are either in the water or out of the water that may or may not require some additional mitigation. And we know that we have some additional environmental assessments that need to be done, but based on the study that was conducted, we're looking at some of these probable costs being around $4.7 million for a dredge mobilization and demobilization. With the placement of sand from a dredge, it is considerably less. It's between $14 and $18 a cubic yard, as compared to the $50 per cubic yard for the offshore sand stockpiling and rehandling. And if you were to go with a complete truck haul, it's even more than that. So we weren't anticipating that. We were looking at either doing dredge or dredge stockpile and rehandling. But as we move forward with the continued projects, the planning, the design, the engineering is about 6% of the construction cost. We're allocating about 10% for contingency. And then the monitoring, there is a requirement to do annual monitoring of the project every year, which is somewhere about $500,000 for the northern portion of the coastline. So since our last public meeting, which was in June, we've accomplished some significant work. So here's a list of some of those activities. You may recall we had PFM Consulting come in, and they were doing some initial proposal and presentation based on some of their surveys and whether or not we should pursue an MSBU or an MSTU. The result of that was to move forward with the consideration of an MSBU, which is the benefit unit, the benefit to the property owners along the barrier island. Staff at that point had made some adjustments to that, which included a look at the flood inundation maps, some of those maps that come out of FEMA and the state DEM. We also had consideration of potentially that 4-zone countywide MSBU concept that did not receive support. As you recall, that was something that consultant had brought forward. And then we had also even looked at consideration of a full barrier island, which would have included the city of Flagler Beach, as well as the town of Beverly Beach and town of Marineland. That also did not receive support, which is why we focused on just the unincorporated area of Flagler County when we looked at it this last time. But we did do a lot of community outreach. Jorge, myself, had given presentations to property owners. We had more than 10 town hall meetings and outreach out in the field. We did conduct a property owner survey. It was conducted and administered through the Polco platform. And then we, as staff, compiled and analyzed the survey data so that we could, so we were prepared to discuss that with you all today. And then we did examine the creation of the northern 10-plus miles for an MSBU in the unincorporated. We have requested, and it is authorized, for that parallel 4x4, used to be a 3x3 study with the Army Corps. Now it takes an extra year and an extra $1 million. So now they call it the 4x4 study. We do need to work with our federal lobbyists and our federal legislators because we really need them to fund that. That is something that we mentioned to Congressman Waltz when he was here. It's something that we need to keep out there in front to make sure that they fund that as part of the appropriations this year. Because when we look at the entire coastline, there's 2 other sections that are right now critically eroded. There are potentially opportunities to have an Army Corps project. And those sections are primarily in Reach 3 and Reach 4. And we can talk more about that if you guys have questions, but that is something that we need to continue to keep our eyes on. And then, as I mentioned,
Sorry, may I interrupt, Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir, absolutely.
So, when you say funded, doesn't it need to be first past the, calculations for being a qualified project?
it's my understanding.
I'm sure I'm not using the right terminology. I apologize. It's escaping me.
This is for the Army Corps and DEP to work together to do another study. So we had that one several years ago where it had identified critically eroded, and as a result, we walked away with one project in Flagler Beach.
Right.
This would be for another look at it.
So you're talking about funding for the study, not for the actual project?
Correct.
Because the study has to get done first. It has to
Correct.
show, it has to meet those criteria. If it does, then that goes to the phase 2 of having
Correct.
the funding approved or appropriated.
Correct. This is just for them to establish funding for the study to be done.
Okay.
Yep.
Understand.
And as I mentioned, we do have the selection of a coastal engineering for some additional permitting and design that is scheduled to come back to you at your November 4th agenda meeting. So this is just all the work that's happened since we last met in June. It is quite significant when you look at everything. So here's a look at the community outreach, the summary. As I mentioned, Jorge and I had conducted more than 10 community meetings. We had approximately 415 residents attend those meetings. We began August 20th, and we concluded on October 8th, a series of those meetings. Overall, I think the comments received were very positive and supportive. The residents felt that it was very informative. They appreciated the information that we were providing to them. And then we had conducted the property owner survey. That survey commenced on September 27th. It concluded on October 13th. We ended up distributing the survey to every property owner in the unincorporated. It ended up coming out as a printed mailed document that went out to them. Additionally, we shared it through email, and at every town hall forum that we had those flyers with us and made them available to the people that were there, so that we wanted to make sure that everybody knew about it and that they participated. We ended up distributing the flyer through mail to 6,775 parcel owners. We ended up receiving 807 completed surveys, which accounts for about 12% participation. And I'll go over that a little bit more when we talk about the validity of the survey on another slide. But here's a look at the survey document that had gone out to them. There was a QR code for them to scan. It would give them the survey information for them. They could also type it in through that link. And on the back of the survey, there's another QR code, and it directed them to the packet that I gave you, which was really the recap fact sheet of those 4 projects or 4 distinct reaches. But as I mentioned, when we were creating and evaluating the survey, we wanted to ensure that it had statistical validity. In other words, the degree to which the results of the survey could be considered accurate and reliable, meaning that the conclusion drawn from the survey data accurately reflected the opinions of that target population. So when we look at the target audience or population size, we started with 6,775 parcel owners, and we wanted to ensure that we had a higher degree of confidence in the results and allow for some margin of error. So to ensure that our results were accurate and reliable, we knew that ideally we had to have at least 604 surveys completed. We actually exceeded that number. We received 807 completed surveys. Therefore, we felt that we had a high degree of confidence in the survey results and that it reflects the opinions of that target audience or the people within the unincorporated Barrier Island. We also wanted to make sure that the public was aware of the challenges that we as a county, as a coastal community, were facing with regard to beach renourishment. And based on that survey response, that was, I think, one of the first questions we asked them. 96% of those property owners were aware of the ongoing efforts and the challenges that Flagler County had as far as the beach was concerned. I did give you in your backup all of the survey questions that had run through Polko. I'm not actually going to go over each question. I'm really going to probably just provide you more of the highlights. I think some of the things that I left out was about like how long have they lived on the Barrier Island? Are they a full-time resident or part-time resident? I didn't think that it was as important to really go over some of these more larger issues. So when we asked them how important is beach preservation to your overall quality of life, 90% of the surveyed population had said that it was either very important or somewhat important to them. When we asked them, in your opinion, how urgent is the need for a structured beach management plan, 93% said it's very urgent or somewhat urgent. And then when asked about which of the following beach management concerns do they think needs the most attention, 80% had said either erosion control or dune and beach renourishment as the top 2. And then 62% had mentioned storm preparation and recovery. When we asked the public how supportive would they be to be contributing financially to a beach management assessment, 63% said that they strongly supported or somewhat supported. When asked what funding mechanism would they prefer for the beach management program, 87% said taxes from tourism-related revenues, 76% taxes from local option half-cent sales tax, 27% said that they were in support of taxes from ad valorem property tax in the form of, a carve-out or a dedicated millage. And then 20% had said that they supported that annual property assessment or an MSBU. But when we asked them what did they think was a fair annual contribution per household, 25% said that they don't support a contribution, but you had 75% support said that they do support a contribution. So when it's broken out here, we had the different funding ranges for the people to choose. 23% had said that they support anywhere from $100 to $150 a year. 20% said $151 to $300 a year. 23% said $301 to $500 a year, and then 8% had said that they were willing to pay more than $501 a year. So when we look at the initial construction cost summary, in looking at this table, it appears to be a little deceiving when we look at the local share of what those costs reflect. For the purposes of this presentation, this is the actual dollars that'll need to be expended for construction activities. So when we look at, for instance, what was accomplished in Reach 1, which is largely the Flagler Beach project, it included the Army Corps, and then even what is planned for Reach 2, along with some other activities along the shoreline. It shows here that there was not a cost to the county, although there were some indirect costs that I'd like to just mention, even though they're not directly shown here as money going out. As you know, many of our departments have been involved in making these projects work, whether it's through intergovernmental relations, grant administration, public outreach and education, our own Dodge the Dune campaign that had costs associated with that, as well as I know our legal team had worked really hard working on getting easements. So there's a lot of other functions that go into this. So when you're looking at the local cost, it's, when I say deceiving, it doesn't capture those indirect costs of staff time and some of the other things that we've done. But when we look at this, what it does tell us is as we move forward with the initial construction of the entire coastline, it's just under $105 million. We've broken it out on the top for each reach, showing federal and non-federal. And then below that, you have Reach 2, 3, and 4, with the distribution of what that initial cost is going to be and where the funding is likely to come from. When we're looking at the bottom half, I separated it into incorporated Flagler, which includes the city, Flagler Beach, as well as the town of Beverly Beach and town of Marineland. We're looking at that 47.4 million, and then largely the unincorporated Flagler at 57.5 million. Within the unincorporated, there is a state portion or share. So when we look at what's needed at the local level, it's $37.5 million. And that's just for the initial construction. That does not include the ongoing maintenance requirements. But that's the number that we're starting with as far as being ready to do Reach 3. So when we look at the local funding strategy, as I mentioned, it's about just under 105 million for the entire coastline. The local cost for Reach 3 is going to be 37.5, excuse me, 37.5 million. Through the state DEP, as part of that critically eroded area, Flagler County has currently submitted some grant application and program funding. In the fiscal year 24 model, we're somewhere around $15 million that we feel will come back to us. As part of the board's direction and support, the board had allocated $5 million in fiscal year 25 as part of that beach management program funding, which would leave us a shortfall of that 17.5 million. And based on the permit modification timeline, this funding is going to be needed over the next 2 to 3 years so that we can start the construction of Reach 3. Uh-huh. This is the initial construction, so this is going to be one-time money that you're going to need just to build Reach 3.
But that year, just 1 year?
One
or-
time. We need to come up with that,
One time, okay.
correct. So we need to come up with
Earliest we
the,
could start that?
I'm sorry?
When is the earliest we could start that?
Well, essentially, you already have, because we've already set aside the 5 million and the 15 in grant, which leaves that shortfall. So the quickest that you could start working towards that would be potentially next year. Well, through the adoption of the budget, you'll have an opportunity, if you were to consider the MSBU or some of the funding options. It'll actually take place next year, but it's important for us to start the process sooner rather than later, so that as we start to build the budget for fiscal year '25, we kind of take this stuff into consideration. So this is the section of ongoing maintenance. So once you have built the entire beach and dune system, you recognize that there is ongoing maintenance and costs. So as we look at this, this is based on a 6-year project interval. So the top number is the amount of money that's going to be required at those 6-year intervals. So in the incorporated Flagler County, which consists of the city and 2 towns, you're looking at the need for about 15.2 million every 6 years. And then you look at the unincorporated, which is really what we're focused on here today, is going to be about 49.2, almost 49.3 million. So as we break down the equivalent annual cost, as you see on the bottom, in the incorporated areas, they're going to have to contribute, if they wanted to maintain their beach, about 2.5 million a year. And then in the unincorporated, which again is today's focus, we're looking at 8.2 million. So this is what's going to be required annually, so that at the end of the 6 years, you have the 49.2 or 3 million available to you. What is made up, part of this project planning value, you do have that annual cost that I mentioned before, so that is built into this. We recognize that it's about 500,000 in the unincorporated area that would have to be paid out of this. The other thing that may not be fully covered in here, but it is partially covered. If we have a storm, we will continue to go after federal and state reimbursement through a declared hurricane. Like, for instance, right now, we're going to be shooting the LiDAR over the coast on Thursday from a visual inspection, not from LiDAR, but visual inspection right now. We're looking at the loss of, or the cost of putting back a emergency dune to repair what happened after Milton. Right now, rough numbers is about 14.6 million. With that, we will go after FEMA, which is 75% of the cost. The remaining 25% is going to have to be split between the state of Florida and the local jurisdiction, which in that case is Flagler County. So when I look at the numbers just for the match on Milton, it's somewhere close to $2 million. So we do need to have money set aside for, when we do have hurricanes. So there needs to be some money set aside so that it is available, not necessarily in those 6-year intervals, but as storms happen. The challenge that you have is when you don't have a named storm and you don't have an opportunity to go after FEMA and state dollars, such as like a nor'eastern, which typically happens in the winter months. So, yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, I'm a little late, but for the current storm, for Milton damage, the Army Corps Restoration Program, they have to restore the beach for that part at their cost.
Correct, the 2.3 miles or I think it's 2.3 miles in Flagler Beach, the Army Corps will come back and rebuild it. But when you look at the non-federal tapers and the rest of the
So
beach.
it's the non-Flagler Beach portion damage from Milton is the $2 million you're talking about?
What the numbers that I gave you were for the unincorporated, the area that Flagler County has jurisdiction over. When we looked at doing the visual inspection, which is the, north of Beverly Beach, going up to just south of the town of Marineland, the cost that is calculated right now as an estimate, we still have to shoot LiDAR and have to do the calculations, We're estimating ballpark right now to be 14.6 million. That does not include Flagler Beach. That does not include Beverly Beach. That is just in the unincorporated area.
Right.
And so there will be a local match requirement. I think when I ran the numbers, it was like 1.8, 1.9 million. So it's just under 2 million right now for that section.
Right, I just wanted, yeah, they're separate. Okay.
Yeah. So when we look at the local funding strategy for that preferred approach for that ongoing maintenance, as I mentioned, the renourishment is every 6 years. There is some potential eligibility from DEP, about 13%. Again, this is where it's critical that we work that Army Corps of Engineering study because the areas that we have that are critically eroded potentially could turn into Army Corps projects, which would decrease the amount of money needed at the local level. But right now, as we're looking at this, the local share of that northern 10-plus miles of unincorporated would be about 8.2 million annually. We've already identified 5 million in the fiscal year 25 budget. On the board side, that was that combination of the half-cent sales tax with the TDC money, which has that shortfall at $3.2 million annually for that ongoing maintenance. So when we look at the unincorporated area of Flagler County and we look at the 10-plus miles of coastline that we have, currently there are 6 county parks and 1 state park that make up part of that project. Although the River to Sea Preserve is at the northern end, it is part of marine land. It is one of the parks that we have on the coast. It is just north of the MSBU project area. But in looking at this, when you look at the amount of parks we have and what that brings to the project, you have about 2.4 miles of the 10-plus miles. It's actually publicly owned lands. So when you add the percentage of the project cost to that, it's roughly about $1.7 million of public interest that needs to be supported as ongoing beach maintenance. So when we were working this and we were looking at potential funding opportunities, this is for the initial construction as well as that periodic maintenance, which would be every 6 years. We had identified tourist development tax. We had talked about doing consideration of a special assessment in the form of an MSBU. We also talked about general revenue, which the county did pledge in the way of our local option sales tax. We did talk briefly about, with the public about, could there be some sort of carve out or dedicated millage that would support those public properties, that those public parks. If we do have funding identified and maybe we fall short on it that year, we could potentially bond it because we do have a revenue stream that would support our beaches. And as I mentioned, after any declared disaster, we do have supplemental recovery funding in the way of FEMA and the state DEM. So certainly we would continue to go after those sources of funding to help with this beach management project and ongoing maintenance. So when we looked at the potential funding opportunities, this is just putting it on a slide and looking at, considering that I think the entire county, enjoys the use and the benefits of being a coastal community. We understand that everybody who either resides or visits Flagler County does receive a direct benefit from the beach. So in looking at the proposed potential funding opportunity, we're able to demonstrate that shared commitment in funding the beach within the unincorporated area using a combination of tourist development tax, the bed tax, as well as our portion of the small county half-cent sales tax. And what we were looking to apply on this was if we were to carve out a tenth of a mil reallocation in our budget, it would not result in a millage increase, but what I would suggest is if there's a way that we can kind of do some sort of a reallocation, it would add about 1.5 million. It would help with the protection of those beachfront public parks. And then that would leave the annual property assessment portion at about 1.7 million. So that 1.7 million is what we would propose would be on the parcels in the unincorporated area. When we originally started with this, we were looking at roughly 6,700 parcels. In reviewing and analyzing the individual parcels, it's actually down to 6,364. And that assessment, MSBU, would be broken up where you would have a base rate per parcel based on the benefit that they received. And then the remaining 50% would be property value protection. It would be weighted based on the property's assessed value. So showing you on a map, you can see the area just south of Painters Hill, or just north of Beverly Beach. That Painters Hill area would be the beginning of where the Northern 10 MSBU would be proposed. And then that would go all the way north, just south of the town of Marineland. So you can kind of see it. I highlighted it in the green just to give you an idea of where that area would be. And that's, again, for that Northern 10 MSBU in the unincorporated Flagler. So here's another picture just to kind of visualize where that would be. Again, it extends from the southern border of the town of Marineland to the northern border of Beverly Beach. It goes from the mean high water line to the east side of the Intercoastal Waterway. This is what we would refer to as the unincorporated area of the Barrier Island. And as you know, north of that Big Bend area, north of Barn Park, along A1A, we do have some challenges with exposed rocks on the beach and in the seabed. The mitigation, if necessary, is not part of the project right now, but we are aware of it, and that's why we'll have to do some additional environmental work there to determine whether or not we can impact it. So when we looked at the benefit analysis of creating the Northern 10 MSBU, we recognize that there are benefits to local property, that the benefits received from beach and dune renourishment may be defined as the project cost itself. This is a quote or documentation out of a MSBU that was created in Polk County. And then when we look at the benefit analysis details, it supports property values. Paying for a dune and beach nourishment directly benefits the property owner by protecting their property from erosion, storm damage, thus preserving and potentially increasing the property value. It also provides that coastal protection, an enhanced dune, replenished beaches provide for better protection against storm surge and erosion. It also makes it a more attractive, safer place to live. It will improve the recreational capacity because a well-maintained beach can improve recreational opportunities, which further enhance the quality of life and desirability of property. And then naturally the beach environment and habitat protection. The county's strategic plan does call for protection and management of our natural resources, which includes protection and renourishment of our dunes and beaches. So in looking at the benefits, that's what we would offer in the way of the analysis. When we look at the assessment benefit area, as I mentioned before, it is the properties that the area encompasses along the shoreline from the southern border town of Marineland to the northern border of town of Beverly Beach. Again, from mean high water to the east side of Intercoastal. The criteria for inclusion includes any parcels located within that unincorporated area on the Barrier Island, properties that currently have an assessed value. The property use could be residential, commercial, it could be vacant, improved, et cetera, but it's for the benefits received in that area. When we look at the methodology, the property value, naturally properties with a higher assessed value will pay more. Location on the barrier island, properties closer to the beach will likely have higher assessments due to their assessed value. The benefit received, flat base rate would be applied to every property for the specific benefit that each property receives from the program. And then the assignment of that weighting to benefit category. So 50% of the property value protection would be based on the assessed value, and the remaining 50% would be for the other benefit categories, and that's what we would call the base rate. So in looking at the barrier island assessment with that value component, we understand that we would need that $1,715,125. It would be split where 50% would come out of that base rate, and then 50% would come from the assessed value. So each one of those would individually make up the $857,562. So as we work through that methodology, when we were looking at this, these are the top is the assessments, the group by cost. So out of the parcels that we have, the assessment range of $134 to $150, that would apply to 212 parcels on the barrier island. The average assessed value of those properties is about $30,000. As you move up, we've got an assessment range of $151 to $300, which equates for the largest segment of parcels on the barrier island at 4,511 or 71%. The average assessed value of those properties is $310,000. And then when you go to the next category between $301 and $500, that's 22% of the parcels, a little over or just under 1,400 parcels. And that's with an average assessed value of $637,000. And then when you look at the properties that would be in excess of $501, it's about 4% of the population. And those are properties that have an average assessed value of about 1.3 million or more. So that's a look at the parcels. And then that bottom is looking at the parcel on the left. It's got the parcel assessed value, and we kind of broke it out by 100,000 and what the assessment amount would be. So if you're looking at this, if you're at 100,000 assessed value, your assessment would be $162 a year. 200,000 assessed value, you'd be paying about $190. The area in blue is the average of the assessed value properties on the barrier island. And so when we look at this, a home that is the average value of $407,000 assessed value, they would be paying $247 a year. So when we look at applying that to the funding stream, this is what we're looking at for the Barrier Island Beach Management funding, including that Northern 10 MSBU. So looking at this chart, the top left, it's got the county-wide funds, which is the tourist development tax at $2 million, half-cent sales tax at $3 million. The allocation of the tenth of a mil would generate the 1.5 for a total of 6.5 million a year. When you look at the column that says it's got the dollar sign from the Northern 10 MSBU area, when you look at the amount of money that's generated in tourist development tax, we're estimating, and it's probably higher than this because I think the resort contributes about 1.2 million a year. So this is a very conservative number, but we're estimating that out of that 2 million, 1.3 million is coming from ownership in the hammock to begin with, so it would naturally support it. When we look at the amount of money contributed in that MSBU area towards the half-cent sales tax, about 600,000 is generated from people that live on that barrier island. And then when we look at their portion of what that tenth of a mil allocation would be, it's about 300,000. So when we're looking at the funding from the proposed county-wide funds, even though it is 6.5 million, about 2.2 is already coming from property ownership within the hammock. So then when we're looking at the bottom half and applying it through the MSBU, it would generate another 1.7 million. So in total, the MSBU area is contributing close to $4 million towards the 8.2. So the folks in that area are essentially paying 48% of the cost of the ongoing beach management program. And then just looking at some of the supported benefits received and the legal authority that we have, whether it's the tourism tax being environmental and recreation, it is outlined by statute 125.0104, which is the creation of tourist development tax. When we're looking at our half cent, it was in support of infrastructure and beach renourishment. And it's also covered by Florida statute 212.0553. And then the dedication of millage, which is in support of public parks and park system. That would be coming from our general fund. And then the bottom to the MSBU is covered under a different statute, 125.011Q. And that's really for the environmental, recreational, flood, structural risk, property value risk is where that is supported for that benefit. So when we look at the consideration of creating the Northern 10 MSBU, again, it's formed under Florida Statute 125.01, I believe it's 1Q. It would be done with Flagler County Governance, the Board of County Commission, and this would be for the collection of revenue as well as the spending of funds. And it would operate in consistency with all federal, state, and local acts, statutes, and regulatory procedures. Again, this would be for the routine maintenance, as well as any emergency declaration work and ongoing stuff. This is something that we would continue to work forward with legal for the Nexus test.
While you could have a separate governing board, you wouldn't need one because the commission would serve as the governing board for the MSBU.
Correct. Correct. It would be set up with, it would be done through the Board of County Commission. The MSBU portion is one portion of the funding. The rest is all controlled by the board. So I think it makes more sense just to keep it with the board. So when we look at, and I just want to recap where we're at, because I know I showed you these numbers earlier on in the presentation. Scenario 1, the one at the top, is for Reach 3. That's the initial construction. That was estimated at the 57.5 million. We know that the state will contribute 20 million through our grant application and program funding that we're currently in queue for. We're hoping to get that 15 million. And then we've already allocated 5 million in fiscal year 25. So when we look at that gap, again, just to recap, it's 17.5 million. If we were to go forward with the proposed MSBU, collections would take place for fiscal year 26 and then fiscal year 27, and that would generate 3.4 million. And then if we were to consider the proposed reallocation of 1/10 of a mil, again, no millage increase, it would just be a reallocation of county funds. Over fiscal years 26 and 27, that would generate approximately another 3 million. And then if we were to continue to contribute like we did in fiscal year 25, assuming that we would, again, allocate 5 million in years 26 and 27, that would generate the remaining 10 million at the bottom. There is a forecasted gap for that project of about $1 million. As I mentioned early on when we talked about Hurricane Milton and whether or not we're going to have to come up with additional funding for that, there may be additional funding shortfall or gap of another 1.8 million. So I say all of that because I don't think that we can delay the approval. I just think that it'll compound the financial issue and risk potentially of having the money available at the time of construction. When you look at the bottom scenario, which is really the maintenance scenario, that's a little bit easier. It shows that moving forward with the maintenance side of it, that the allocation between the county and the proposed MSBU, it would cover or break even, if you will, on the ongoing maintenance. Again, that is subject to change, though, because every year we're going to have to look at this fund, determine what the cost may or may not be. And if we can get additional state or federal funding, this amount will decrease.
But if you, hold on. If you use the 26 and 27 MSBU collections up top for the construction part of it, then aren't you behind the 8 ball by 2 years on the ongoing maintenance?
Well, the maintenance won't start until you've already constructed it. So when we're looking at the construction for the unincorporated, what you're thinking of is probably the money that needs to be set aside for the Reach 1 and part of Reach 2, which is in the cities, where they're going to have to start setting money aside for ongoing maintenance.
Well, that's another issue.
That's another
'Cause
question.
there
yeah.
could be some claim there about the tourist development tax usage of those funds, I would think. But I think I understand the point here is that if the project didn't get done till 27, then you still have 6 years going forward of MSBU collections.
Correct.
to
Correct.
make it. Okay.
So I do think, though, moving forward, there is potential eligibility for continued state support in the way of grant funding, especially in those critically eroded areas, which is why it's extremely important that we continue to be mindful of the timing of the Army Corps participation and the potential funding that comes with those projects, if we're able to get that review done. This will need likely, as I mentioned, some additional funding for the local share of disaster, just because we don't have this in place yet, and we just had Hurricane Milton. And again, I think that the delayed approval will likely compound the issue and challenges that we have. So looking at the next steps, I do have this on schedule for consideration at the County Commission meeting for November 4th. And that would be for consideration and approval of this concept. I did mention that we still need to work with legal for the legal review, that rational nexus test, the creation and adoption of the MSBU ordinance. We would have to notify the State Department of Revenue by the end of this year. And then working on the fiscal year 26 budget, we do have to provide notice to taxpayers of that maximum assessment for that $1.7 million benefit that they received. We would look to include this in the fiscal year 25-26 budget process, which we anticipate kicking off in December of '24, but we will finalize that sometime in August or September of '25. Hopefully, we will begin collection of that MSBU revenue in November of '25, because that's typically when people start paying their tax bills, is in November. And then we do need to continue discussions with the other municipalities. I know that we've been trying to schedule an upcoming joint workshop with the city of Flagler Beach, as well as the town of Beverly Beach, town of Marineland, to talk about what they're looking to do along their coastline. So that is it for me, but I am open to any questions and hopefully can provide some answers to you.
All right, thank you. We'll start up here with questions. I appreciate a few of you answering some questions or asking some questions along the way. Commissioner Sullivan.
Yeah, this is a general, I have some other questions later, but FDOT has indicated we're not going to build any more secant walls along our 18 miles of beach. Is that correct?
I wouldn't say never, but right now they've got the one kind of in Flagler Beach, and then they've got the one that they're working on to the south. As it stands right now, no, there are no plans for them to build additional seawalls.
Where there is secant walls in place, is the cost greater or lesser to maintain that beach over the years?
I think it's, when you're talking just the sand portion, you do need to put sand in front of a seawall or else it'll
Just sand.
erode. It's just sand and you will have some dune there, I would imagine. But I think when you look at the overall cost of putting in the seawall versus beach renourishment and dune system, I think the cost of the dune and beach is probably cheaper because you still have the expensive cost of the seawall. You still have to put sand in front of it.
FDOT pay for the seawall?
FDOT paid for their seawall, and it's my understanding from talking to the district that they had allocated funding, I think it was somewhere around 500,000, that they would put sand back in front of the seawall
Right.
a year.
So I just say, it's not in any of this right now, but when we're looking at ways of ultimately saving a little money, that could be a possibility. I just want to throw that out there, that's all. That's it.
Well,
My question.
Dave, I don't think so, because there's other seawalls involved. You have the seawalls that homeowners put in south of Varn Park. It's quite a few. But the seawall doesn't work unless you put sand in front of it. So
But FDOT kind of includes that when they put in one of those walls.
a limited amount of sand, but we're going to have to put more.
We are?
Yep.
Okay.
Why don't you put rock in front of it?
Hold on, can't, there'll be time for public
Okay,
comment.
That was my only question. That's it. I got my answer.
Mr. Hanson, do you have any other comments?
No, it's a remarkable presentation, and one that I've certainly been involved with for a long time. I really appreciate all the good work, and this is one of those categories of jobs that are projects that kind of falls in the must-do category. If we don't do it, we'll lose the beach. So this is a critical thing for us. Thank you.
Any other questions? Open up for public comment. You have a question?
Yeah, no, I don't have questions. It's just a summation, but we'll do the public
After,
comment
okay.
after.
All right, so at this time, we'll open it up for public comment. If you wanted to take this time to approach the commission on this issue, on the beach nourishment plan, come up, state your name. You'll have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon. Jane Gentile-Ude. As a real estate broker for 45 years. Who's determined the benefit of value of my house in Plantation Bay for the beach? Okay, I want to know who is determining the values, Leanne, your district. What benefit are the people out in Bunnell going to have from the beach? Actually, my husband and I have only been to the beach twice because we have dogs and I don't want to bring sand into the house. I'm very fussy. We usually go to the beach when we go on cruises and get the cabins dirty, not our house. You have raised our taxes so much on nonsense, and you're collecting more money. You pay the legal department almost $1 million a year. I think you really need to look this over. But more than anything, what I'm gathering from this beach renourishment is you all look like a bunch of school children listening to your master. You hire her to work for you. You should be telling her and the staff what to do. You should ask, not me, how do you derive these benefits? How am I going to benefit? I want Jay Gardner, and I like Jay, somebody to come out and tell me how I'm going to benefit from the beach renourishment. And I love Eric and I love Flagler Beach. Okay, but I don't go to the beach. And if someone buys my house, I don't see any listing in Plantation Bay that says only 3 miles from the beach. Although as the crow flies, it is 3 miles. The commission should be telling staff what to do, not vice versa. This is what I find totally deplorable, that you all look like a bunch of school children who come in and you listen to your employee telling you what's going on, and then you give your attorney $1 million a year to shell things out to people, to pay Captain's Barbecue $1 million who just opened their 3rd restaurant, and you shaft us completely. I really think this is disgusting. You need to table everything and take control and do the work, not listen to your employee telling you what needs to be done. Thank you for your time, and I don't mean to get upset. It's just my New York Jewish nature. I'm sorry.
Mr. Chairman, if I could comment on that, she's not included in the program.
All right, I think we'll have, at the end of public comment, we'll have time to address everybody, but you're correct. The barrier island is the area within the MSBU of the unincorporated county. Did you have a comment? We'll address at the end. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, Richard Hamilton. I live on Island Estates. I would stress I'm here today just purely out of my personal interest. I'm not representing anyone except for myself. And I've also got to say that it really doesn't matter to me personally what happens to this, because none of the methods you're proposing really make me any financial hardship. So I'm not claiming that it's going to impact me. I'm fortunate. I recognize that there are others who are less fortunate on the hammock. And I appreciate that Heidi has made efforts to take care of those people. I own several properties, none of them on the beach. They're all in the intracoastal. They're all in the intracoastal floodplain. And I still have a difficulty understanding why I'm considered getting a benefit from this when we've just seen that your yard was flooded. I don't know if yours was flooded or not. Mine was okay. It was a few inches below. There are other people who have a whole lot of problems from flooding, which has nothing to do with the beach. It wasn't to do with beach erosion. So I'm not going to try and take my 3 minutes to cover every item. I'll send Heidi a note. I'll copy you all on it with various arguments. But what I do want to recognize, first of all, Heidi and Jorge and her staff have done a great job. This is a very difficult issue. So I'm not at all going to try and say they're wrong or whatever. They're trying to make the best they can. But first of all, that survey where people said how much they were willing to spend, question 9 was a misleading question, because it said, how much are you willing to spend? It didn't say just on the MSBU. I mean, as Heidi's analysis shows, everyone on the barrier island in the county is going to spend some money through the property taxes, through the sales taxes, and whatever. So it's not just the MSBU. And then, as I say, I'm not sure what benefit I'm getting for this property. My taxable value is of my properties, not on the beach, is actually exceeds some of the people who are on the beach and their taxable property. And you're saying that this project increases my value more than theirs. I think that's wrong. I think you still need to look at the possibility of some element of this plan being based on those who are on the ocean, based on linear footage or something like that. So with that, the other thing is you have excuse me, this evening, I think, a discussion about the FDOT and the protection of the A1A. It's not clear whether this reach 2 ends at R45 or R46. The difference being that one of those range monuments is where the A1A bends away from the ocean. And I don't believe, some charts show that that bend is included, some charts show it excluded. But it really makes sense if the FDOT is going to spend some money on it, that they protect that whole reach where the A1A is very close to the ocean before it bends away. But that may be too late for you to do, considering all the approvals that are in. Anyway, I'll send you all a note later. Thank you.
Thank you. Next public speaker, please.
Hi, my name is Randy Hunsaker. I ain't no expert, but I've done construction my whole life. And you keep talking about hauling sand in and dredging it and bringing it back in. And every time you get a storm, it washes it back out. And in my opinion, like you can make, you could put rock alongside the road and then build a seawall next to the road. The rock would break the waves, it'd quit washing the sand out, and you'd save a lot of money overall. As far as the beach goes, you could put a breaker out there of rocks, Then you could have sand where people can go to the beach in a certain area. That's all I'm saying. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Celia Bugilisi. I do not live in the Barrier Island. I am here since '91, and I live in the west side of the Intracoastal. I have to agree with the first two speakers, including Mr. Hamilton. I think his name is. I know him for a long time. The issue, and also this gentleman, it's beautiful the way the beach is with all the sand and everything, but we risk every storm, and we're getting more and worse, washes off that sand. I think this county has to start thinking about the following. You need to plan for the future that is right here, what we're having with all these storms. The flooding and the ocean coming in, you need to start thinking about allowing only people to build half a block from the ocean front or one block, like I've seen in many other coasts of the United States, including Texas and the Northeast and the West, because these storms are going to destroy everything on the beachfront. That's the first thing the county needs to start thinking about, not allowing any more new homes built right there on the ocean's edge. And whoever lives on the beachfront, it is supposed to fund this type of renourishment. Because myself is like I am with Mr. Gentile. If I go once a year to the beach or less, it's a lot, because most people, like in the other side of the Intracoastal, our age, we just don't go anymore to the beach to Sunday. It's a problem. It's a lot of work to walk in and out of the beach. So we should not be paying for this. And it will be collaboration, it should be minimal, because this actually benefits those people that are in the beachfront. Those houses are several millions each, and they can really afford this. If they afford that type of property, should not be paid by the people in Western Flagler County, in Bunnell, city of Pamcos, and the other residents around. That's the only thing I could say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kim Carney, Flagler Beach. Just wanted, I've been to many of these. This is not my first one. And you also know about my experience in Flagler Beach working with the Army Corps. So my biggest concern right now is the other municipalities. All the numbers are there, everything adds up, 35 million plus minus 5 million, I get it. There's no consideration for what the other two municipalities who are intimately involved in this decision haven't even met with you yet. You've had no meetings with Flagler Beach. There's been no communication with Flagler Beach. I've read the interlocal agreement with the Flagler Beach. I don't agree with the interlocal agreement, and I don't think you're interpreting it the same way we do. You have a whole group of people that support tourism in Flagler Beach, that if all that tourism money is used on the unincorporated, where does Flagler Beach get any money from tourism? So there's no way you're going to get a meeting with these other municipalities before November 4th when you're supposed to vote on this. But could you at least ask your administrator to reach out and have a conversation on where everyone stands? Does everyone know what the county is doing and what steps you're taking? Because you are impacting two other very vital municipalities in this county. Thanks.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. All right, we'll bring it back to the dais. Additional questions? Let's clarify some of the public comment. Just if you could just address the comments of the other areas outside of the barrier island being a part of the MSBU.
Certainly, thank you. So as I presented this, this is for Flagler County unincorporated residents on the barrier island. This does not include everybody in Flagler County. It is only for those property owners that are located on the barrier island, which means you have to either take the State Road 100 bridge or the Palm Coast Parkway Bridge to get onto the barrier island. And it is only for the properties that are north of the town of Beverly Beach and south of the town of Marineland. So again, it's not everybody. We do, as Flagler County, we do own 6 parks that are in that stretch, which the county does have a responsibility to protect so that we don't have breaches where we're flooding residential communities within that barrier island. The reason why this does not include, right now, the city of Flagler Beach or the town of Beverly Beach or the town of Marineland is because Flagler County does not have jurisdiction over those municipalities. We cannot simply go in there and create an MSBU without the city or town's approval. Therefore, the only legal authority that the Board of County Commission has is for the unincorporated area, because we recognize that we've got roughly 6,700 parcels within that area, or in this case, for the MSBU, about 6,400 parcels. That is the area that you all have jurisdiction for. You are the only government for those people. The people within that stretch are looking to the Board of County Commission for help, support, moving this forward. That's why it doesn't include the city of Flagler Beach, town of Beverly Beach, town of Marineland. So I don't know if everybody now understands that, but that's why it's not the people in Plantation Bay that are going to be paying. It's not the people in Palm Coast that are going to be paying. It is the MSBU for that unincorporated area. There was a question about putting rocks out in the ocean instead of using sand. As you know, and Commissioner Hansen can attest, we went to Tallahassee, we met with DEP, we talked about jetties, we talked about rocks, we talked about wave attenuators, we talked about seawalls, we talked about a lot of things, and at the end of the day, DEP is going to tell us what we can and cannot put on the beach. They have said that we need to look at doing a dune and beach restoration. They are not willing to permit anything other than that. So that's why we're not looking at rocks. It's not that we didn't try. It's not that we didn't have that conversation with them. But there are regulatory agencies that dictate to us what we can do. We can't just go out there and do whatever we want. I don't know if I missed anything. I tried keeping track, so.
I think that was most of, I know Richard had talked about whether it was R45 or R46. But that stretch, the road still has, it's different than the southern reach where A1A is directly on the ocean. There's still private property.
It is, and I
along that area.
think the difference in the document that you see, initially, Reach 2 was going to be south of Varn Park or right at Varn Park. What we are doing and what's at DEP right now is that permit modification, as I mentioned, that takes it north of Varn Park. So on the original Reach 2, it was at a different R monument. It now is being proposed to be at a higher R monument, which takes it north of Varn Park. That agenda item that you have coming up today, I think it was roughly for 1.8 million and change. And it's that JPA change that the FDOT was asking us to, or we asked them to modify. There is roughly, and I want to say it's like $400,000 remaining out of the Reach 1 project that FDOT was willing to consider us applying in Reach 2. Reach 2, again, is an area where they have a secant wall. That's why they're allowing us to apply it. It's only $400,000. It's not a ton of money. I know that the JPA amendment says 1.8, but what's left available is about 400, and that will be used in Reach 2. Again, it's at a higher monument than what it was originally proposed.
Okay, so I just want to make sure the comments from Jane and Celia are clear. And we'll come back to the board for more comments and questions? Go ahead.
I'll start there. I'll start here. Go ahead. No, I did want to answer two things. One, to some extent, they're correct because there's a tenth of a mil that comes out of the entire bucket of taxpayers. But to Mr. Hamilton, I thought about this long and hard because I was in the same thought process when we started this a while ago. But when you think about that barrier island and the property values on the barrier island, and I wish we had a chart to show the percentage of tax base they represent out of there. If you don't have properties over there holding their value, what does that do to the other properties within the barrier island? I mean, if we had to condemn entire condominium complexes, as they've had to do in certain areas, property valuations would decline in that area. And so I think about it sort of at that perspective. You don't think about it like that. We could probably take it offline. But then if you have entire linear frontage destroyed, what does that do to your HOA costs if they're not paying into your HOA any longer? There's no property there. So I've been looking at it somewhat like that. And the same goes with the entire barrier island with their valuation of their homes. If their valuation is no longer there because of beach erosion, beach damage, property damage, how does the rest of the county make up that tax? So I've been talking with people, and I'd love to meet with you offline to talk about that. But what happens if there's no barrier island and there's no properties and there's no higher valuation out there? How much tax do they pay? How do we make up for that if the property's not there? So it's just a thought I've been thinking about a lot lately, and as we have these discussions. Because I don't benefit from the beach, but I do benefit from the fact that they are a tax base that pays in. And if they weren't there, it would be more tax on the interior. So thinking about it like that, but I think that they are right, and then that they do pay the tenth of the mil that's in here. And I wasn't very clear when I said that, was I? Laughing. But you can see, I mean, when you lose entire frontage, it pushes the tax back on the rest of us because they're not there to pay it any longer. Their valuation is gone.
Well, the biggest component of what you said there is, and specifically to Richard's comment, that what it does to his property value if the beach goes away. So
Well, and if
there is
you're
a
sitting in an
benefit. There is a
HOA that
benefit. Yeah, there is a
they're no longer there to support your HOA, I mean, it all just pushes back. And, there's no perfect solution on this one.
Commissioner Sullivan.
Yeah, if you won't mind now, I'm not going to be on the board much longer. So I thought I'd give kind of how I get to where I am at this point. I'm not challenging in any way the costs that are going to be involved in this. But I go back to the survey we did. We spent money to do a survey. 90% of the entire county said the beach was important to them and urgent to them. Even when it came to, would you be willing to contribute any funding to keep the beach viable into the future? And we're in the 70-75% number. We're not talking specific amounts of money. We're just talking in general. So starting there, my philosophy as I developed it on this was that we have the tourist development money that's already assigned. There's a part of the Tourist Development Council money, and it's so much per year. And in the first year, fiscal year, this coming fiscal year, we're going to put $2 million in from the Tourist Development Council, but they may not have that amount of money in that fund each year, but at least be $1 million, and we may increase it. So that money is there. My feeling was that one way or another, we should have some contribution from the rest of the county to keep the beaches going. And I thought, first of all, well, we just make it a high enough priority in the budget. It comes out of you start off at the beginning of the year, you say it's going to take this much money per year, and we just assign that as a cost, like roads. It's really not that much different than roads. Everybody pays for roads, even though they don't use them all the time, or don't use any specific road. The beaches are there we've done ordinances to prove that it's open to all of us. And it's back in the earlier part of this century, or last century, they used to use the beach as a road to get north and south from St. Augustine. So I was coming from that side, so I think everybody ought to pay based on the survey. As this plan has developed, and as I see it now, I think it's a compromise. Politics and government are a compromise. What we've tried to do is make it as equitable as possible. And I think where we are now is a reasonable decision. It's not perfect, but it's a compromise. And we are asking for a tenth of the mill. We are asking for an MSTU. We are asking for the tourist development dollars. We are asking for the half-cent sales tax dollars. So I think, I have to admit it, I didn't think you could do it, but I think the compromise that you've come up with is as good a shot at taking care of this as possible. It doesn't take care of the future of the Army Corps program and how that's going to be funded in the future, that kind of thing. But that's how I developed my thoughts on this. I know that's taken a long time, but you won't be able to hear me much longer, and that's kind of where I'm coming from on it. Thanks.
Thank you. Any others, Commissioner Bryan?
Yeah. Yeah, like Commissioner Sullivan, I just wanted to kind of give my thoughts on it since a lot of these decisions will be left for future commissions. But I want to thank staff. I think there was a lot of hard work put into the thought process here, and all the work that was done with surveys and town halls and the analysis work. But overall, from my thought process from the, the 10 feet above, if you will, I think the proposed additional funding for this unincorporated area is a good approach. I think it's supported by the survey, which I do believe seems to be statistically significant. 807 out of 675 folks is, as we saw by the numbers, there's high confidence there. There's a strong benefit analysis and to support the dedicated millage justified by the parks. I think there's a rational nexus there. And then the MSBU, I think makes sense and is, again, supported by the analysis and also the surveys. And lastly, the legal approach in terms of being supported by statute seems to be there as well. So overall, I would hope that this commission and future commissions would recognize those points and move appropriately to get the MSBU started in the future. I did have 2 mild pushbacks, one or maybe disagreements, if you will, for respectfully, for Mr. Hamilton. I read that question 9, and I'm just going to read it. It says, "What do you believe would be a fair annual contribution per household for beach management?" It was only asked of those 6,775 parcel owners, and 66% of them said $300 or more. So, excuse me. 66% of them said at least $100 is what it was. I apologize. So, but still, I think the question was clear. And the other respectful pushback I would have for Ms. Carney, the fact is tourism supports Flagler Beach with millions of dollars of promotion and marketing dollars. So, and those business owners there appreciate that very much. So I don't think it's fair to say that there's, TDC funding doesn't go towards supporting Flagler Beach and the businesses. And lastly, if I'm not mistaken, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think the Flagler Beach Commission has been pretty adamant or assertive about wanting to do their own beach management. And so they're going to have to work with us for sure to figure out how to pay for it, because I haven't heard any conversation from that side about how they plan to do that. I don't even think they've even addressed it. So, I'll flame through that a little bit, but I think that's fact. So, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sure, thank you. Did you have something else, Commissioner Hanson?
Well, just as to wrap it up, if we don't do this, then what do we do? And when do we do it? I think this is, as I said before, this is a critical step to save our beaches. We've discussed alternatives up in Tallahassee with the DEP, and we've had the special engineers in Olson look at this. I think we're doing the best we can. It's an incredible effort by our staff to put this together. So I think this is absolutely the right thing to do.
All right, I just have a few comments addressing some of the public comments. As I've had the opportunity to go to one of the town halls, but I've also talked to a couple of the commissioners in Flagler Beach with some preliminary discussions about this, but addressing the benefits of the MSBU. Right, first and foremost is protection of property values, and it is dependent really about where your house is located. You're getting more of a benefit than others, but I think the CCL plan, that one is not part of this plan. Is that correct, Ms. Petito? Now it's on values?
Correct.
Okay. And again, it goes back to what Commissioner Sullivan said. We've kind of gone through a few different variations of this, and this is kind of the compromise to where we are right now. Whether I agree with every single one of the points really isn't the point. It's trying to get some consensus. But second, on the benefits, right, we've understand that A1A can be compromised, and the barrier island has one way in and out. It's through the barrier. It's through A1A. The beach renourishment protects that vital source. That's why DOT has spent a lot of money helping us protect that. But that's the second benefit. The third, being environmental. We've seen what happens with dune breaches in Washington Oaks. The quality and the values of the hammock would depreciate significantly with widespread dune breaks that would inundate the coastal hammock, and you would end up with wide swaths of dead oak trees throughout. The big oaks that provide all the shade and the character of the hammock would end up going away with massive dune breaches. The environmental for wildlife and plant material would be substantial. And really, I think we'll just stop on those three. I think that's the main parts. I think we talked about flooding, right? This isn't a flooding program. This is protection of the dunes and the beach and the property behind it, but you get a good dune breach in the middle of our barrier island, and that will affect flooding and that one specific storm if we got a dune breach and it was opening beach and tidal flows into the intercoastal, that would significantly affect flooding. So those are the main parts of the benefit. That's why the entire barrier island, in my view, is tied to the beach management and restoration. I do have some questions which we can address before the next meeting, and I've got some sustainability questions about the economic funding, and really it's about the monies that we're reallocating, right? So we're reallocating monies that we have been using for other areas in the past. So part of what I want to get a better handle on, and whether it's consensus, I can get the information from you, but I want to let you know that I want to get a better idea of the half-penny sales tax monies, that and the 1/10 that we will obviously set aside. That's been historically the goal of the board is property tax relief, and 1/10 has been the goal for the past few years. So obviously that becomes in question if that's going to be able to be sustained moving forward. But definitely want to get, with all the other needs that we have, right, where this has kind of been pushed to the top priority, and maybe rightly so. It's a huge part of our environment and sustainability, at least economically. So if we're reallocating these funds, I need better assurances of where we're postponing some other potential improvements, or where we're not going to be spending money. We're really allocating a significant portion of money, and I just want to get a better grasp of that moving forward. I'm still not sure how the every 6 years renourishment works. So obviously the most important and costly part of the beach nourishment is the mobilization of equipment for dredging, which is the most economical aspect. So every 6 years, if we're estimating for nourishment, is that through dredging? And if so, do we have a finite source of material to be going after? Because I see us, if we end this source, are we then looking and going for additional sources? Is that kind of built into that monetary estimate as well?
So when our consultant had done the beach management study, they had identified a source of offshore sand about 7 miles off the coast. They had permitted it, and it is what they feel is adequate for the next 50 years. That was a requirement of the Army Corps as well as the entire 18 miles of coastline. So you do have sand source off the coast sufficient for at least 50 years, and that's what your permit allows.
Okay, and every 6 years, if it's deemed, right, this is still a question if it's deemed, we're estimating based on a 6-year interval, but that cost we can move the dredge and the pipe up and down the entire length of the reach depending on what needs to be filled.
You would. I mean, it's similar to what they did in the south part of Flagler Beach, where that pipeline and that activity continued north. It would be the same thing. It would just be a coordination. And the 6 years is not something that is etched in stone. It was more from a planning perspective from our coastal engineer and the discussions that they had based on the activity that we've seen recently over the last, probably dozen or so years that when you look at the Army Corps, I think they were somewhere around 10 or 11 years that they would come back. I don't think that the Army Corps anticipated that they'd be coming back less than a year after completion. But again, I mean, it's all from a planning perspective. It's all subject to change. But just so that we could move forward with the figures and what we know to be true, it's again, it's what our consultant engineering firm came up with. They think that every 6 years is doable.
And that's the money that we're planning now is in order to make sure we stockpile enough for the maintenance moving forward. Bear with me while I go through my notes. And the breakdown of the 17, I guess one of the other things I'll need some additional clarification on because of questions I've had is just through the breakdown of the funding for the maintenance and nourishment moving forward. So exactly what's involved in each of those categories we broke out. We can share it with the rest of the commission. I just got to get a better idea of where those funds are going and where the costs are going. And I guess the final thing was, right, so when we first did this plan over the summer, we kind of got railed publicly for moving way too fast. We were trying to get something pushed through because of a budget cycle that made things seem as though it was being rushed through and not being substantially thought through. So want to commend staff now for the past 2 months. We've taken time to be able to reach out to the public through various town halls, through the work on the survey. And I don't want to, this is my personal thoughts, again, I don't want to leave us short of not making sure that we take time to work with the other municipalities. I don't think the other municipalities are in the same boat that we are with the expertise in this that we've acquired over the years. And I know Kim has worked hard in the past on it too, but the comments I get is that the last thing I want to do is leave parts of our beach unplanned or uncovered, right? And an entire beach has to be fully maintained in order for there to not be any susceptible components or for the whole plan to not fall apart. And I think we need to take some time to work with in planning with our other municipalities on the coast to make sure that they understand the ramifications, that we work through the interlocal that we've already established, and maybe just make sure, again, that they understand the implications of what the Army Corps is requiring. We can't, I think there's different ideas of what the maintenance is going to require. And that bothers me only because I want to make sure that there's a consistent level and focus on the entire length of the coast, and we don't leave gaps there. So that would be the last comment, really, is that after spending all the time, after doing things correctly to get public input and look at all the parameters, we got plenty of good feedback. I mean, I sat and listened to some very passionate residents talk about various issues that they had with it, but we've to your benefit, you've looked at all of this stuff. And I think to counter the other argument that I heard through public comment is the commission, since the very first meeting, has been leading this direction. We made it pretty clear that we weren't jumping on the original proposals that were sent, that we wanted to do our due diligence, and we gave you the direction to go through this path of acquiring public input, and really with the different HOAs, with the Dunes Development District, through discussions about the bridge and tolls, a wide variety of different options, and I want to appreciate that thoughtfulness. So, to counter those arguments, the commission's been driving the train to ensure that we collect public input appropriately. But that's just it. Again, I think there's a few things that I want to make sure that this is a sustainable plan moving forward over different economic cycles. I think it's built right now for this economic cycle, and I don't know, want to make sure there's variables built into that. But that's it for my comments. I guess we need to give, I just want to say we need to give direction, though, I think, moving forward on if we're gonna have different workshops before November 4th, if we're gonna have consensus to bring this back as an agenda item on November 4th. Those, I think, are the most important things right now. And Commissioner?
Yeah, I just want to talk on the coordination. I will say this, that we've been coordinating with everyone involved, including the city of Flagler Beach, throughout the process. How many times has Al Hadid been at your meetings and gone through every single detail there was concerning the Army Corps program and what was needed to get it done? So I think there has been coordination. There'll continue to be a heavy need for coordination. Bringing a dredge in and setting up the pipes isn't a small feat. So we'll have to keep coordinating with the Army Corps over the years on that. And so I just want to say that, yes, I acknowledge that coordination is always important, but I do think that the county has done everything they can to get people involved. And I just point to that one thing, both on the tourist development side and with our Al Hadid, our city attorney, our county attorney has been unbelievably involved on this process for the last 3 or 4 years. So that's all I have to say.
Okay. So if that's the end, right, you've proposed a plan to bring this back November 4th, but you opened up some additional windows for other meetings or workshops or outreach. So does anybody have anything to offer? Did you want to say something to that regard?
I mean, I wasn't planning on any additional outreach for this particular piece because it is for the unincorporated area and the unincorporated area only. So I don't feel that there needs to be additional outreach within the unincorporated area. I'd be more than happy to share with you a funding strategy of how I think we can accomplish this with the use of half-cent sales tax, as well as the tourist development tax, as well as the general fund. I think that you've already alluded to the fact that we have been in contact with the cities. We had tried scheduling a meeting prior to this. However, it had gotten delayed until after the election. There's still an opportunity for them to join on, whether it's in the form of another MSBU or some other program. I know that Jason Harrow with the Corps had finalized the strategy for maintenance, ongoing maintenance plan that has been provided to the city of Flagler Beach for their input through our coastal engineer, Ansley. So I know that there have been communication, primarily probably with Flagler Beach, more so than maybe the town of Beverly Beach or Marineland, but I do believe that everybody's aware of it. As you alluded to, our county engineer has been heavily involved over the last probably 7 to 10 years. So unless you're deciding or giving me direction on some other community outreach, the only thing I have notes for is to provide the financing or funding plan, and then bring it back on November 4th for consideration.
Okay. Anything else? Direction? I mean,
I think we got to bring it back on the 4th and vote on it. We got to do that.
I would just offer anyway that I want to make sure that we have personally, and again, this is consensus can overrule me, but I want to make sure that there's at least some acknowledgement from the other municipalities that are affected, the three, that they understand, they've seen the report, and they understand what we're pursuing. And if they have any questions, their last opportunity is going to be on November 4th, but they can definitely reach out to us.
I don't know if I would say that they have until November 4th. Right now, what we're just trying to focus on is the unincorporated. You still have time for them to come on board in the form of a different MSBU or their own program altogether. But certainly, we can share with them the report, what our consultant has shared with us as far as cost and what that frequency looks like. But it's, it wouldn't necessarily hinder or change this MSBU, because this is solely mapped out for the area that we're specifying. It'll be in the ordinance, the area. We have to define what those limits are. So this particular MSBU is only for the area that we talked about today.
Okay. And I know that this will get highly publicized, so it's not as though your letter would be the only thing that they would get, but I just want to make it clear, I guess, that if there's any lingering questions, or if they haven't quite figured out on their end what the annual maintenance or the costs are going to be, that they reach out to us so that we can utilize, our staff to help them figure that out, and that we have common. That our metrics are common, that we're all planning on the same types of renourishment costs or programs, so that there's not gaps.
Well, Andy, the Flagler Beach has a whole different program, and that's with the Corps of Engineers. And their renourishment is 10 or 11 years. And they've got that plan in front of them. Now, I'm not sure that they've thought about how they're going to pay for it, but they have the plan. And I haven't seen it, so I don't know what it costs. But I think we stand ready to help them come up with a plan to pay for it. But they don't fit this MSBU at all. That they have entirely different problems there. So, you can't just wave a wand and say, well, Flagler Beach wants to be part of this. No, they can't do that. But as Ms. Petito said, we would certainly help them set up an MSBU for their 2.6 miles, if that's what they want to do. But I think our attorney's been involved with them. They know what they've got in front of them, and if it just doesn't fit with this. This is the unincorporated 10 miles
Okay.
that we have to take care of.
Yeah,
We have to take care of.
I agree. I think the two need to be delinked.
Yeah.
All right, well, with that, we've covered everything. We've got public comment. At this time, if it's okay with everybody, we'll take a 10-minute break
Wait,
and then
can I-
come back for, whoop,
Just clarification,
ahead.
is she still going to notify them formally of our intent?
well, if, it was just my comment, so if everybody wanted to give her further direction.
I think what you were saying, and I just want to, I think maybe we should just go down the line. Should we not at least notify them formally? That way, if they want to send representation to our November 4th meeting for discussion,
With a copy of the plan.
or maybe at that point, because we could have a, if they're adamant of joining or having their own, they could at least notify us so that we can begin. I think we should formally notify them. I'm not saying that we don't continue on November 4th, but maybe that Heidi notify them that this item will be on the agenda.
I think passing information to people is always
Yeah.
a good thing to do.
That's,
Yes, if
that's
it
it.
helps in the
That's why
robust
I would
debate.
not look at this as,
Yeah.
we're asking
No, I
them
totally
for
understand it
permission
for the
on this-
unincorporated.
this
Right.
specific
And we can
thing.
build out
It's just
something for them.
A measure of making sure they informed on what we're doing.
Right.
We'll just formally notify them that we're intending to do this. Okay.
I can do that. I can also send a copy of the PowerPoint to them. I can work with Ansley to break out what each jurisdiction looks like because they're part of the incorporated area. Just so if they're choosing to follow along with what our consultant's recommending, then they know it's required of them.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any other comments? If not, we'll take 10-minute break and we'll come back for the next item, which is the airport. All right, thank you. We're going to go ahead and finish. This is our second item today, and this is a review of the Airport Noise Abatement Portal from our transparency website. Mr. Salinas, how are you today?
Good, Commissioner. Good afternoon, Chair, Commissioners. We're here to today to provide, that's Director Seeger and myself, to provide you an update on the Airport Noise Abatement Portal. So a few months ago, Taylor Phillips, our GIS manager, developed this form and the back-end application that would collect information on aircraft-related noise. So this is a picture of that form that the residents had opportunity to participate in. And it has a back-end system to be able to collect it and properly map it. Here we have a snapshot of the dashboard with the dots, the red dots, representing the residents with a submission to the portal. We have some test data. We just put on the bottom how it was reflected to us. You can see this Taylor's name, but we didn't want to put any specific names and emails there. So we have Taylor's information, but basically we would click on a dot and we will get the information below with the different columns that we were collecting in order to do the analysis. We have some test data, as I mentioned here, but this represents these dots that you see there, the ones that you see there today, represent a distribution of 3,095 submissions.
And one of them is mine because I logged
you had a
into
test.
test.
Yeah.
And I think the other one is
It's
GSB.
Yeah, Heidi did one for a test as well. So the portal was open approximately 4 months ago. It was open from June 3rd to October 2nd. We received close to 3,100 submissions from 12 different residents. 3 of the residents submitted 98% of these submissions, or a total of 3,022 submissions. From the remaining 73 submissions, to add up to the 3,095, 44 of those submissions were submitted by one resident that lives further away from the airport, or what we call outside the noise-sensitive area. Out of the 3,095, 2,521, or 81%, were classified as unfounded, and 572 were classified as requiring additional information. Here we have a table that represents the submissions based on, we just use the first name. And for example, number one, person here, number one submitted 1, number 2 submitted 1,422 submissions, number 8 submitted 564, and number 11 submitted 1,036. Again, 12 residents submitted these calls to the system. 3 residents submitted a total of 98% of these calls. Every form that was submitted had an opportunity to select whether they wanted to be contacted back through email, phone, or not contacted back at all. Airport staff did not respond to every portal submission, given that the majority of the submissions were from the same 3 residents. So Mr. Seeger here actually contacted some of the ones that said needed a contact from him, but the majority of the calls were from the 3 same residents. Transgression involving flight school were also contacting, the schools were contacted and reminded of the voluntary noise abatement procedures. So Roy actually called these folks and reminding them that we have this in place. It's voluntary, but we encourage them to continue to support that for us. Wanted to share some of the comments that we received from the residents. There were a number of comments that were not, we cannot share in public. So what I did was I took 6 of the comments, which include the 3 residents that submitted the majority of the calls. One of their comments is in here, and selected other 3 residents that were not part of the bigger number. And you can see the different comments. Roy, I think, distributed copy of some of the comments that we were not able to share with the public. Have Roy talk about this, please.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Roy Seeger, Airport Director. What I wanted to show here is, so we have, how can we go on there and look at these different types of complaints and see how the aircraft, what were flying, what was happening during that time of the complaint. So that one of you see up there was in a double L section. And you can see that the aircraft, through that shows that the aircraft was doing 100 miles an hour and was at 1,000 feet. You also can see over here, there was multiple aircraft in the area at that time, in that time period. But one of the things you can see, one of the things that we have asked during our voluntary noise abatement procedures is to where these aircraft make their turns. And one of the things that we've asked them is they make the turns in the green space. And you'll notice here that those aircraft are pretty much doing that. Some are in the green space there, or a little further east of US 1, and then again, I'm sorry, west of US 1, and then east of 95 as well. So we did have an opportunity to go in and look at all the different complaints and see exactly what was going on at the time of the complaint. Now, there's one thing, it said, why, and maybe you're asking this question, why did you find it unfounded? Well, when you look at these different complaints, some of them being unfounded is that basically the aircraft, the majority of these complaints were coming from 7 o'clock in the morning to 10 o'clock at night, that's when we were asking people to do the majority of the flying. We're asking people not to fly or do training between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m.
So just to share some of the findings, the summary of findings. So based on the data collected, this tool was determined to be not as effective as we thought it would be, from the perspective that continuing to collect the data would probably render the same results, given the number of information or data points that we've collected thus far. Some residents use the tool inappropriately by writing in their foul language, harassment for the airport staff, and then some threats on some of those comments that we receive as well. 12 residents out of the total number of residents that live close to the airport submitted calls. Again, 3 out of 12 submitted 98% of the calls. And the majority of these calls were found unfounded. As of 2019, within 2.5 miles out of the airport, there were almost 4,300 lots with structure on it, which equates to 0.0023% of the residents that have complained about airport noise. Transgressions were followed up as appropriate, and they will continue to be followed up as we continue to work on this issue.
Commissioner, I just want to show this map real quickly. That's the airport, obviously, and then the areas that we're looking at on there are the areas. The red areas are the areas that we look as noise-sensitive areas that we ask the aircraft to stay away from if they can. But as you can see, it's kind of hard, being the fact that all these neighborhoods are built at the end of runways. So at the end of the day, I mean, they're all at these living in this neighborhood, they're always going to have some type of air traffic over their homes.
And these loops actually flip. They can do either side of the runway, not just
Correct.
You're showing only one side of the runway.
Correct. They can go, the opposite direction as well, depending on whether they're landing on runway 24 or runway 6. All 4 different runway ends.
So your instructions to them in doing their training is to turn. The goal is to turn over the green areas.
The green space, correct. Right. I do have a slide at the end that we can show it to what those noise abatement procedures look like at the end. And one of the things that Jorge brought up, can I see that last page? Is when we first looked at this a long time ago, back in 2019, those numbers of those, in 2000, there were 4,298, almost 4,300 residents back then. I'm sure by now, almost 5 years later, that those amount of residents have increased, which even drive that percentage of people complaining at the airport even further down. And one of the things I did a little while ago is update the FAA chart supplement. What is this chart supplement? Well, it is a published, it's published that all the pilots can have access to this, and most pilots always have this in their handbag. And when they're going to an airport, they look it up to see what's going on at the airport and gives all kinds of pertinent information about the airport. Now, in the AFD, it's not highlighted, but I highlighted on here for you to see that on there it does say noise abatement procedures in effect, voluntary restraint from touch and go landing operations from 0300 Zulu to 1200 Zulu, noise sensitive area, all quadrants of airports. And the 0300 to 1200, that would be 10 o'clock at night to 7 o'clock in the morning local time. So all pilots have access to that. We cannot put there every different noise abatement procedure that we have. So basically when they would see that, they would go to the airport website, look under noise abatement procedures, and they would see the procedure there.
So next steps for this process is staff will continue to monitor air traffic and transgressions, continue to educate pilots and flight schools regarding our voluntary noise abatement procedures, deploying a new website, which is planned for 2025. The airport will have their own website. We also plan, or Roy plans to update the airport master plan to include a new noise contour map. That would happen sometime mid-2025. And also, we plan to conduct in 2025 a lead test on airport property. That's been some of the requests that we've heard from residents as well. Questions?
Questions from the board?
No, I have none right now.
Nathan?
I know we had talked before about landing fees, and I know you were in a group, right, or some discussion, I think there was, about landing fees. Is there any movement on that? Oh, Roy. I was talking to Roy. Jorge's like, what?
Same jacket.
Right.
I have more hair. Not much more, but I have more hair. I lost my train of thought. The question was landing fees. So we were, actually, that's one thing that we talked about, doing landing fees. We looked into it, and as we started to go down that road and more airports were looking at it, it became very, what's the word I want to use? Not very favorable in the aviation community. It was being a lot of the people were, a lot of the pilots were not in favor of it. Were opposed of it. So a lot of other municipalities took a lot of pushback on it. And so I was just kind of waiting to see what other airports were doing for right now.
I saw where D-Land is considering it, and I think what it looked like was everyone was considering it in this region because everyone was considering it to begin with.
Right.
Right? So once one region starts charging the landing fee, then that puts pressure on Palaca and D-Land. They'll get more flights because they're free. And so they were going to put a landing fee on so that they got not as many flights, right? So it looked like it was a circle of everybody going, well, if you're going to charge a landing fee, I'm going to charge a landing fee. So I don't have as many touch and goes.
Right. And we took a lot of pushback, and not just from the local pilots, but also the big AOPA too.
That's what I saw.
It was a huge pushback on it as well. I know there's still talk about it. I know that even Ormond Beach looked at doing it right now. They approved the ordinance to charge the fee, but they have not gone forward with the contract to actually start charging. Same thing with Kissimmee. The land also pushed back on it as well. They did not approve it into land at this time.
It's $3 per 1,000 pounds. So what is that roughly per touch and go on those
So if it was
flights?
a Cessna 172, that would be about $6 per aircraft
Per touch and go.
per touch and go.
And who,
per landing.
who calculates that? Is it just done through an app or?
So that would be under, part of that program I showed you, Vertower, shows every aircraft that comes and goes out of the Flagler Executive Airport. So there's another company called Plane Pass or Vector. They'd be using that data, and they would be the ones that would ultimately go out and charge the fee to the various pilots.
Right, and so then, say it was $6 a touch and go, and it gets charged, Vector tracks it, and then goes it back into, those funds go back into the airport fund, right?
Correct. Mhm.
And then does it impact any of your grant to charge?
No. Right, and that's a big one too. Like, that's the thing that DeLand made a big faux pas on, saying that they were charging landing fees to deter traffic. We can't do that. That's not what we're doing. This is just, if we wanted to start charging landing fees would just be another revenue stream for the airport.
And is there, so it's across the board, all planes regardless, can't be targeted towards schools. And people who rent hangars cannot be excluded?
Yes, we can.
We
We
can
are allowed to
exclude
exclude
people?
our local tenants, correct. This would
Okay.
be, the landing fee would only be for itinerant tenants, which those are people that are not based at the airport.
So the flight schools that are there now would be excluded if we did a,
Correct.
I think, right, the most important thing is from FAA's standpoint, you can't implement it as a deterrent. It is strictly
Right.
an economic driver, and it has to be based on airport economics. If there's,
right,
if it's utilized as, again, as Roy
at
said,
that.
DeLand came out saying what their intent was, but will get
Not-
killed. It will be.
No, but if we're doing the master plan, it could be something that he looks at as a revenue
Absolutely.
portion.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that we talked about is, like, when you have an airport, and we all know what our funds we have coming in. We know how much fuel sales we're going to approximately do. We know how many T hangars we're going to rent and landing. We know how much money we got coming in. So we base our budget based on the monies that we know we got coming in. This would just be another, and people say, well, you have enough money, you have a balanced budget. Well, that doesn't necessarily is true, right? That just means that I'm living within the means of what the money we have coming in. Is there other further needs that we need for the airport? Absolutely. So if there was another revenue stream, there'd be more things that we'd be able to do at the airport.
Right, because you have a new terminal coming in. And
Terminal,
so
right? I
Get
could use
radar,
revenue stream
get
would
radar,
be
I'm sorry.
get radar.
radar.
That has nothing to do with anything, Commissioner. Well, we've tried very hard. We took that all the way up to getting Congressman Walsh involved with that. As a matter of fact, and I thought I've said something about this before, but radar is going to be going away at all these contract towers. The FAA is coming up with this new program or a new software called situational awareness screen. Basically, it's going to kind of look what Vertower is already doing. So they're looking to get something like that into all the contract towers.
Like AI-powered stuff? Or?
AI powered, yeah. No. It is not AI powered. AI powered.
So landing fees could be something looked at during your assessment and your master plan.
Correct.
Correct. Okay.
Make sure the name of the airport's correct out front also, so people are clear where they're landing.
Absolutely.
Can you address the discrepancy in the number of reports? There's
Right, how it
a
jumped.
gap.
How it jumped from,
Yeah.
right. So what happened during, when this was going on, there were so many, as you saw, complaints that were coming in. Those came in all, like to me, as all individual emails all day long. So what would happen is obviously it just clogged up my email. So what Jorge did, I don't know if was it Taylor's idea. Taylor's idea was to restart it, but then combine all those complaints into one document, which you see right there, and daily, right, daily into one document, which you see there, and then it would be emailed to me the next day. And that is one document that, for one day, I believe it was for October 1st.
I know what's coming next, so just, this is all public record. So I know you discriminately took some information out, but if somebody requests the public record, you won't be able to redact any of that. So the threats and the unkind words will all be in because I would assume that a public records request to verify the data is probably coming. So as long as you're, from our reporting agencies.
Got nothing to hide.
Right. All right.
So with the contours, will that trigger a possibility of a noise study?
Correct. If the noise contours would go off airport property, then that would trigger a Part 150 study. However, I will tell you, back when that study was done, the initial contours was studied, which was many years ago, noise abatement procedures weren't in effect back then. And I will tell you, back then, that airport was a wild, wild west. It was busy, airplanes were everywhere. And one of the biggest things that we were able to bring down by putting in these noise abatement procedures is the amount of traffic at nighttime flying from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. We really brought those numbers down. I remember looking at them initially, we would saw 25 to 30 aircraft flying at nighttime. Now we're seeing most, I see that's a lot when I contact them, is when I see 7 or 8. So what I mean by that, so what's going to happen is when they study that noise contour, because all the DNL study, what they do is that any flights between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m., that gets 10 times value of that would increase it by 10 times.
So I have another follow-up question, and maybe you know the answer, maybe you don't. Palm Coast, the last time I had checked, had not implemented the FDOT statutes on zoning.
Correct.
And so had they implemented it when it was due in 2016, based on that statute, would some of the properties built not have been allowed based on how that statute reads? Do you know?
I don't think so. As a matter of fact, I just followed up with FDOT again about that, getting that approved, and it still has not been done yet. But no, I mean, really, I mean, it's already there. All the residents, I mean, that mistake was made many, many years ago by putting these housing communities around the airport.
Well, I mean, this was 2016. It was supposed to be implemented, so a lot of housing has been built since 2016.
Right, but there was, I mean, but you could have, people got a little bit more forethought to think of, why, this is probably not a good idea to put a neighborhood at the end of a runway.
No, I'm just curious to know if they would have been impacted had they.
Again, you know,
Adam says no.
The city of Palm Coast would not have to implement it, so they could, we could implement it, but they wouldn't have to follow it.
Well, it's not our zoning though around there.
Correct, exactly. And I've also brought up, Commissioner, when I went and briefed the city of Palm Coast, when I talked to them about the airport and what were going on, and one of the things I talked to them about is implementing some type of paperwork and to put into the deed to saying, hey, you're buying a house next to an airport. And they're still building many, many residents neighborhoods around the airport, and they're not.
Yeah, I've been here 2 years, and it was brought up maybe month one about implementing the FDOT statutes on zoning, so they make sure that they're at least adhering to what is in the statute on building, but I have not seen them implement it.
And I think if you look at the dots on the map, the dots are all located in the ITT platted areas. None of the new Cascade or the landing area.
areas
There's none in that area. The only one would be the north end, north of, I can't remember the subdivision, but north of Royal Palm Parkway, there's outlawed those 2 dots up there. Those are relatively new within the past 10 years anyway.
I told you I was going to show you one more. So right there, that is the exhibit that is on our website to show all the different traffic patterns and what we're asking them to do. And there's another page to that talks about not making any turns prior to 700 feet. Also, these procedures don't It's all about safety. The pilot, at the end of the day, is going to fly the airplane the safest way they can.
We had I had asked you a question about the touch and goes and the ability to actually restrict touch and goes at the airport. I can't remember what you said, but can you talk about that?
Sure. So we are not, I mean, I know I've seen in some of the emails from the residents saying, oh, commissioners, you have the ability to be able to stop having touch and goes or any type of different operations. Well, at the end of the day, I hate to say it like this, but you don't, right? That authority only relies on the FAA. If the FAA deemed an operation of an aircraft to be unsafe, they are the ones that have to say it is unsafe. We have nothing to do, at the end of the day, we have nothing to do with airspace. Once that aircraft leaves the ground, that is all federal airspace and all deals with the FAA. We cannot make those rules. Those rules all have to come by the FAA.
And
I don't understand, one of the things that they said, and I get it, touch and goes, they say it's an unsafe operation. I don't understand that. I mean, what is different for touch and go? What is a touch and go? A touch and go is an aircraft lands. When it lands, it's rolling out, puts the flaps up, puts the power back to it, and takes back off again. How's that any different from an aircraft that is landing or taking off? Matter of fact, what happens is that it actually, a touch and go it's actually a benefit, because what it does, the aircraft already has momentum, so it doesn't have a longer roll, so it allows it to take off faster and gets to a higher altitude before getting over the neighborhoods. I hear a lot of mumbling behind me. I know these people don't agree with me, but at the end of the day, you bought a house next to an airport. Unfortunately, you bought a house next to an airport. We did not build an airport next to your house.
All right, everybody, please, that's not appropriate. Outbursts from the public are not appropriate. Let's have appropriate discussions here. You'll have your time for public comment. Thank you.
And we have done the best we can, and to keep continually to monitor this and to implement many different programs in order to help appease this issue.
So I did get in following the landing fee, there was a big article out there, and you were talking about the AOPA group.
Right.
They actually provided a letter. It's a recent letter from the FAA specific to touch and goes. And they said state and local governments may protect their citizens through land use control and other police power measures that do not regulate airspace management or aircraft operation. But that power does not extend to many aspects of aircraft operations, including route, altitude, time of operation, and frequency. Please see that the FAA says, please see the Friends of East Hampton Airport versus Town of East Hampton, New York. In addition, so they're basically saying that we can regulate land use and policing powers, but not the actual aircraft operation. But then they go on to say, in addition, state or local governments that own or operate any airport are not prohibited from carrying out their proprietary power and rights. Accordingly, the airport owner or operator has authority to promulgate reasonable, non-arbitrary, and non-discriminatory regulations addressing aircraft noise and appropriate local interests. See again, the Friends of East Hampton. However, local and state and local government, any such restriction would need to comply with the Airport Noise and Capacity Act, which outline process, analysis, and approvals required for imposing a noise or access restriction at an airport. So I guess, we're very limited in what we can do, but they said we can implement some things under the Airport Noise and Capacity Act, and you're saying what we're doing now is all we can do under the Airport
Correct.
Noise and Capacity Act.
There's stuff out there about stage 2 aircraft, and I know but we don't have a problem with that. It's really not even, I really hadn't heard any complaints about the jet aircraft we have. It's really, and I don't really know if it's a noise issue or just a perceived noise issue, if it's more of an annoyance to the citizens because of the constantness, the constant of the flying of the aircraft?
Please, please, please. Thank you. I had another question. It'll come back to me. So let's talk a little bit about the upcoming, I know we hit on it. Part of the processes for airports is a, kind of like we're doing with the comp plan, is a renewal. You have a master plan that is getting updated and revisited. It will, as we've discussed, it will have, opportunities for public input. There'll be public meetings. The consultants will be hired. You mentioned you're going to look at the noise contours, which, depending on how the noise contours comes in, could affect additional studies or work. I know voluntarily we talked about doing some lead testing to eliminate any concerns about lead. And I don't know if I missed anything else about what we're going to be looking at once that is opened up, but it's, I know specifically the important ones were at least on the noise contours. And then is there anything else that is in that process?
That is the only thing that I would say that we could not, that we'd be able to do is if we found out that noise contours do go off airport property, and then we would submit to the FAA to request a Part 150 noise study. And at that point, at the end of the Part 150 noise study, the FAA would then say whether or not what they're going to do about it, whether it's buying homes or whether it's doing sound installation in these homes around the airport. That at the time would make the decision of what the FAA would do.
Okay. I don't have any more questions.
I imagine, so the Daytona Airport had a notice about congestion of airport, or is it my understanding they're having a lot of congestion issues because of traffic in and out? And they're
Right. So they're actually expanding their Class C airspace that they're looking at doing that. But you look at how busy that airport is. So you got a commercial service airport that has a lot of GA. They do over 300,000 operations a year. You have, and right to the west of them, you have DeLand, south New Smyrna, north Ormond Beach, and then you have Spruce Creek, the private residence as well. So that is a busy, busy area down there.
is that going to impact their flight schools? How many are pushed out of there from practicing since they're?
I don't know. I have no idea. If it's going to, all the biggest flight schools operating out of Daytona Beach International Airport right now, Embry-Riddle. So
Are we going to see more of them since they've got that congestion issue, or?
that congestion been an issue, that's been a problem down there. That's not a new problem.
All right, it's 3:30. If
I'm
we
moving
can
on.
go to public comment. So we have one more item on the agenda. Did you have a question, Commissioner Hanson? Okay. All right, we'll go ahead and open the floor for public comment. State your name. You have 3 minutes to address the commission.
Gina Weiss, Quail Hollow Community. Last night at 1:30 a.m., we have flight school planes over our homes, okay? What nobody is recognizing, the elephant in the room here, which no owners talk about, a letter went out to Al Hadid, the county attorney, from our attorneys of Gray Robinson. There were no navigation easements, okay, to fly over our homes 500 feet and less, which means that we are supposed to be, since they are doing it, and we have proof, I have binders of aerial shots. We should be compensated for every flight school plane that flies less than 500 feet over our homes. There has been cases, Supreme Court and federal cases, one about this. All of you very well know, this is all a lie, okay? All lies, lies, lies. You all know very well that there were old land use maps used, okay? This noise study should have been done about 10 years ago. You used old land use maps to keep this as a sparsely populated area when this has become a densely populated area. This airport is a donut hole in the middle of Palm Coast. We should not be having these touch and goes over our homes. Furthermore, I am so happy Roy Seeger claimed in 2 meetings, one with you guys and one with the city, that Celia Puglisi and I were the only 2 that were complaining about airport noise. I don't know about this noise portal. I purposely stood off of it. My name is not there, okay? It says submissions, a total of 12 residents, all right? I don't know what this means, unfounded. What does that mean? 524, additional investigation. I don't know what that means. All right, so what you're all looking at is no navigation easements, okay, for compensation. You mentioned something, Roy had just mentioned something about a deed now going around to put it in the back of a person when they purchase a home. That's what he's talking about. Now you're talking about navigation easements because you realize you got a big problem, all right? Also, it says over here, conduct lead test on airport property. What about conducting the lead test under the paths of the flight school homes? We're the ones that's getting the most lead, okay? Update airport master plan to include noise contours, which should have been done 10 years ago. When 1129, that runway was updated or rebuilt, whatever they did to it, the noise contours were placed inside that runway. They weren't placed outside in the community, so there's no way to measure the noise of what's happening and what the people are undergoing in the community.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hello, I'm Darlene Shelley, live in Palm Coast. The average 520 loud, leaded, and low flight school training aircraft circling our homes, schools, hospitals, and businesses are a threat to our safety, health, and welfare. The Flagler County Board of Commissioners need to stand up for the rights of the residents and ban touch-and-go maneuvers at Flagler County Airport for flight schools through a simple amendment to the Flagler County Airport Rules and Regulations. These rules have not been updated since 2008, and the fly-friendly guidelines are not enforced. This simple action will improve the quality of life for tens of thousands of residents of Palm Coast and Flagler County, increase our property values, end the constant assault on the citizens, students, hospital patients, business owners, and patrons, and drastically improve the environment for everyone. This board has been receiving heartfelt and fact-filled complaints from exasperated residents for years, from unsafe noise decibels, training flights as low as less than 100 feet over homes, flights too early and too late, and the constant noise from hundreds of student pilots learning dangerous touch-and-go maneuvers over our homes, schools, and businesses. I cannot fathom a valid reason why the profits of flight schools would take precedent over the quality of life of the residents of Palm Coast, Flagler Beach, Bunnell, and Flagler County. We've had enough gaslighting, bully behavior from the airport director and his posse, and kicking the can down the road. It's now time for action, common sense, and to stand up to the pressure from those that profit from the destruction of our environment, do not care about the consequences to our air and water from 720 pounds of lead annually, or the negative effects of excessive dangerous levels of constant noise on our peace and well-being. You simply owe it to your constituents to stand up for their safety, health, and welfare and protect our rights to peace and prosperity. I have documents again for you to review that show the EPA announced nearly exactly a year ago that piston engine aircraft lead emissions cause or contribute to air pollution, which may reasonably be anticipated to endanger public health and welfare. And number 2, Flagler County Code of Ordinances state the Flagler County Airport Rules and Regulations may be amended as necessary by resolution of the board. And Exhibit 3 is Flagler County Airport Rules and Regulations adopted March 3rd, 2008. stating this board's right to amend said rules and the environmental pollution restriction 6.3.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
My name is Melinda Hunsicker, and I live in Bunnell in Daytona North. Our first encounter with all the airplane stuff was when we were building our house. We built our house ourselves. No contractors, me and my husband. We were standing on top of an 8-foot wall with a 150-pound truss when an airplane constantly buzzed us. It's a wonder we didn't fall. Here, 8 years later, every day from sunup till sundown till 11 o'clock at night, we have airplanes buzz our house. You know how hard it is to get up at 3 a.m. in the morning to go to work when you listen to airplanes buzz until 11 o'clock at night. He had showed you all the nice pictures from his mitigation thing that didn't show Bunnell, but I have thousands of pretty pictures over my house too. This is what they do over my house. Thousands and thousands of circles. This is just one day and one plane. I have had so many pictures and emails that we have had to buy a thumb drive to keep them all on. We have emailed Barry Butler, the CEO of Embry-Riddle, to stop his planes from circling our home with all of these going unanswered. We have emailed and talked to people at the FFA. The FFA said we are in their flight path and we need pilots. I responded that pilots don't fly constant circles around people's houses. The flight schools are ruining the peaceful enjoyment of my home, which is one of my rights as a homeowner. The genius pilot on Reddit said, "Why don't you move? Why should I have to move? Because you think it's funny to aggravate the public?" Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
My name is Randy Hunsicker, and it all started out when my wife said building our house in N454 and N3977 from Embry-Riddle. They started circling us. I mean, like 150 feet up, just skimming the treetops over and over and over. I emailed California, and I told them that the plane that was rented from them, N3977, was terrorizing us. He got his plane taken away. That plane no longer is in Embry-Riddle. I believe it was Steve Pellegrino in N454ER. He started a whole ball of crap, and he's telling every single pilot, I have a list of every one of them, over 100 of them, that come to our house every day from morning till dark. They circle my yard like this constantly, one after another. I email Barry Butler, CEO of Embry-Riddle. I email him like a minimum 4 times a day. He tells that plane to leave and 10 more come to take his place. And it happens every single day, all day long. And it's been going on for 8 years. And I don't know. I'm so sick and tired of it. I can't begin to tell you. I have put comments on Reddit. Barry Butler sees them. He's called Reddit and had me canceled from Reddit. I put comments on TripAdvisor. He's called TripAdvisor and had me taken off of that. So now I'm blocked from those emails. And you can read my emails on Embry-Riddle scam reviews. There's a million of them, and I didn't hold back. I said cuss words, whatever. That's the way I feel. And there ain't one pilot up there that has the balls to come and see me personally. I've told him 1,000 times, send him to my house. He knows where I live. You come and see me. You're such a badass.
All right, let's keep the language.
Yeah, I just don't like it. I'm sick and tired of it. And all I get is crap. I've called Flagler Airport, and when I called them and told them what was going on, they told me, oh, they can't talk to a plane once he gets 2 miles out. Well, I can make a phone call from here to China. What kind of crap is that? It's, the whole thing is a mess. And it is absolutely terrorism. I am terrorized every single day by Embry-Riddle. And when Barry Butler tells his planes to get away, them pilots call other friends from Flight School Academy, Epic,
All right, thank you.
Sunrise, yeah, I heard it. Sunrise Aviation, and they all start coming to take over the place. It's an endless
Thank you,
ball
sir.
of crap.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Jane Gentiliud. When I first had the honor of meeting Gina, and in 2020, I was here when there was an airport advisory board that Jerry dismantled, and I think Les Sabin was here, and Jerry basically ordered Heidi to reestablish that board. It has never been reestablished. Roy Seeger kicked Les Sabin out of a hangar, which my husband, who has worked in aviation since he was 16 years old at British Aerospace, he now works on the Artemis project at Kennedy Space Center, and he wants to meet Les Sabin. That's what should be rented. Fixed-based FBOs, fixed-based operators. These are people who own jets. They come in, they rent the space. They work on their jets, which don't use leaded fuel at all. Okay. They work on their jets. They house their jets there. They don't do takeoffs. My husband worked for several FBOs when we first got married in Miami. These are major corporations that own planes, that they need a place, and this is what we should have. FBOs, fixed base operators. My husband and Les Sabin will give you all the help you need. Not only that, when these jets come in, they come in and whoosh, they take off. They don't go over people's houses. I live 10 miles from Kennedy Airport in New York. I never was awakened by a jet. I lived, 10 and 15 miles away before the two other things is, I mentioned the jets, the FBOs, the FAA. The other day, the FAA, they're a bunch of morons. They didn't even report a near accident in Texas with one of these flight school pieces of crap. They try to keep it away from the public. They're a bunch of idiots. I had an FAA person, anyway, I won't go into that. Thirdly, who are these people? I have to go through security to go into the courthouse. Who are these people? Where do they come from? Remember Mohammed Atta? He didn't do touch and goes. He just wanted to go fly in the air. Who are these people? You need to fire Roy Seeger. You need to fire Heidi Petito. You need to take control. Andy and Leanne, you have the brains to do this. This is disgusting. Get rid of the flight schools and have FBOs only. You'll have corporations come in here that won't annoy anybody. Please. And talk to my husband. He's in aviation. He's 60 years old and he works on the Artemis right now, and he says the same thing. But he's working now to pay our tax bills so we can pay his fat salary.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
My name is Celia Puglisi. I've been here since 91. For many, many years, we were fine with the executive airport. Let's go back to be an executive airport and make the money with the real pilot that take off and go to a destination and keep their hangars here. This is what we need. When all this started, was never the airport a problem. Was the schools that were brought here. In the beginning of the 2000s, I was here, the only one poor person, telling the then Chairman Darby and the other commissioners, you are opening a can of worms today, approving a request with the past other airport director for schools to come here to the county. I was here in that meeting. I was the only one that spoke against this. You're opening a can of worms. This is what we have today. I mean, they are saying with this thing, I am not listed on that portal because I'm 81 years old. I'm not anymore a computer wizard, and I don't have an X account because Mr. Seeger decided to put and Mrs. Petito, an X account. If you're not a member of an X account, which it's a displeasure to me, I am not a member, I cannot put a complaint on that portal. You know something, one of the ladies complaining on that portal, I believe, if she was listed, she lost her remote-based home job because the noise is so unbearable that she could not any longer hold Zoom meetings with her job or telephone meets with her job. People is losing their jobs, are losing their health. They're going crazy. Of course, they get mad. If you have so many aircraft round and round, so close to the airport. I have them by my house. I live 8 miles from the airport, north. And you know what? I was here the first time because I said, you're bringing a nuisance right here. One thing is to have a normal neighborhood, right? And another thing is to have a school put next to your house. It's a total different story. This is dangerous. A tragedy is going to take place here. And all those in this county commission that do not decide to stop these schools are going to be held responsible for the loss of life. Remember, I don't want a tragedy, God forbid it. But you see what? Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of flies every day over these people especially. I have to deal with the ones from Embry-Riddle. Oh, I don't have peace on my back patio when I sit down for a peace and quiet. I cannot hear the birds because they are up there. They're high, but they're up there continuously. So, and I live 8 miles from the airport. I brought this thing from the beginning. It's getting worse. Please pay attention to the people. They get mad. If they insult, it's because they are outraged of what they have to put up with. Thank you. Do something.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Les Abend. I'm from Flagler Beach, Seaside Landings to be specific. I hadn't intended on talking, but I heard my name a bunch of times, so I thought I had a responsibility to say something. This particular, I was on the Airport Advisory Board, as 3 commissioners here know. It was disbanded when I was on the board and acting chairman. Mr. Seeger is doing his best. This is a script from every airport across the country. What I learned from some of the folks that have been up here speaking is that information is helpful. So rather than coming up here and complaining and supporting about this particular issue, I'll volunteer my time. I'll volunteer my time to talk about some of the issues that they have because you can't stop the airport. It's a federally funded airport. And this is part of the practice of an airport is to provide the training facility. It's unfortunate, it makes noise, but I think education is very important for the public. I will take the public up in my airplane and explain what happens during a touch and go, what happens during regular landing. Speaking of touch and goes, all due respect to Mr. Seeger, 03 Zulu to 12 Zulu at this time of year is actually 11 o'clock till 8 in the morning, okay? So it will vary. Those times should be local. Speaking of which, that was a supplement that most pilots unfortunately don't look at very often, and it is, Mr. Seeger explained, we had a quick discussion in the back of the room before he came up and did his presentation, but at the end of the day, first of all, put in local time. Secondly, there's got to be a way to say what that noise abatement procedure is, and my suggestion has always been put up a sign. There are signs in all across the airports, or all across airports in this country. Use a sign. Granted, he believes that transient aircraft are the ones that are least responsible for all the noise, and it's the flight school airplanes. That being said, I still think that's a possibility. Beyond that, Commissioner Pennington, you indicated this issue with landing fees. The AOPA and other people, myself included, use a system called automatic dependent surveillance broadcast, which broadcasts your airplane position. All of us as pilots prove that based on safety completely. It had nothing to do with enforcement action, And that's the concern for us, is now you're going to report on us using our N numbers, either for enforcement or landing fees. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? All right, I'll bring it back to the board. Any follow-up? Mr. Seeger, was there anything that needed clarification that you heard through the public comments? I think one clarification that I heard is there's online this terminology called flight school mills, and the fact that the appearance that we have all these flight schools. We have one flight school in two. We have Phoenix, and what's the other one?
Teens in Flight.
Teens in Flight. Well, Teens in Flight is a very small program, very boutique, if you will, program. But thank you. I forgot about Teens in Flight. And then the others use the airport from outside base operations. So just Teens in Flight and Phoenix are the two that we have.
Correct.
There's not an overabundance of facilities on our airport that house flight schools.
Correct. And
Okay.
like I say, Phoenix East, I believe Phoenix East has 6 or 7 airplanes. Teens in Flight has about 4 or 5, like 4 airplanes. Like I said, the majority of these aircraft that are coming using our public airport are from other airports in the surrounding community. And I understand what these people are saying. Those airplanes, they're not coming from Flagler. Those airplanes, we've looked at this before. You know, we'll see the airplanes, I'll track them, they'll take off from Daytona, do their training out there on the west, and then they go back. Has nothing to do with the Flagler Executive Airport.
Right. I think that was the only, and we do, your plan has noise contour on it. Your current plan has a noise contour, right? Didn't there was noise contours?
On the airport master plan?
Right.
No, so those noise contours were done during the environmental assessment that was done for the near-term projects that the airport does. That was done actually prior to me getting here, and that was being all done for the primary reason was the extension of the runway. That's why they did that EA.
Okay.
And that's why they did those noise study at that time.
Okay, and we'll update that
We'll update
this
that.
year. Yep.
Correct.
Okay, very good. Anybody else?
Nope.
All right, with that, we'll adjourn that portion of the meeting and we'll move to legislative priorities. We'll try and make sure we have a little bit of a break before we get together at 5 again. No pressure.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Holly Albanese, Assistant County Administrator.
Afternoon.
I'm here to talk about the legislative priorities, and I will try to go fast. It's a short presentation. It's really going to be up to you.
I'm not trying to rush you, don't
Nope,
worry.
no, but we got other things. So I'm going to go over the policy priorities. And just so you know, I've taken into consideration, because FAC sent out, it's on their website, a lot of the policy priorities that they're going to be considering. And you know, you have that policy conference coming up in December. And then also Small County Coalition, Chris Doolin did send around his first briefing, which indicated what they're looking at and proposing for their policy agenda. So with that said, currently we have in front of you 11 to consider. And some of them we've already talked about, like the Transportation Disadvantage Program, which is on the Small County Coalition agenda as well. Also, FAC was considering something for affordable housing as on the policy priorities. They deferred, they said it was part of their guiding principles, so it's not going to be part of their agenda. But basically, this is what they said in an affordable housing program: increase or eliminate the caps on rental and manufactured housing to allow for more flexibility in administering the SHIP program. Next is the support increase for funding for local water infrastructure projects, including conversion programs, so septic to sewer conversion programs, and also address programs that are where residents are incurring a cost as well. I took into consideration what we discussed at the last meeting, and I was asked to separate the beach renourishment from these other water projects. So I did. I have them as separate policy priorities, but this one is specific to water infrastructure, and I believe both FAC and SC, Small County Coalition, are considering this as part of their policies going forward. Continue support for the enhancement of local government cybersecurity. Obviously, that's a big topic. We already discussed that. Again, scrap and scop. That is on the Small County Coalition. And I thought I saw something on, FAC, but anyways, scrap and scop, grant programs for paving of small roads. And then continue support for beach renourishment. As I said, I separated that. To restore and stabilize the coastline. As we know, last year, the legislature did pass a bill which provided some funding. You had to apply for the grant by July 15th, I think it was, and that was for grant funds, and it was specific to certain counties. We were one of the named counties in that one. My hope is that we can get support from the legislature to maybe put more money into that particular program. The next one is support amending that statute 163.08 relating to the Property Assessed Clean Energy Program, which is PACE. This is part of the FAC policy. They said it's deferred to committee. I know our county attorney, Al Hadid, is basically running that one, and I assume that will be discussed during the policy program. And it was requested at our last meeting to be added to the policy priorities, so I have it here. After that, we have support raising the 911 fee to accommodate increased expenses and expansion of technology to continue providing high quality service to citizens. We had put this on our policy priorities back in 2022 and didn't receive any traction. And the reason why I put it on here again is because FAC has it as part of their policy priorities, and they are asking for it to be adopted. So I think through, a couple years later, everybody's starting to experience the same issues we have been. And if you need any further information about the 911 fees, back in 22, I have the original information on why we pursued it and the details of it. And basically what we said was that this was enacted in 1985 at an amount of 50 cents per month per device accessing 911 services. It was decreased in January 2015 to 40 cents, which was a 20% reduction. And actually, we looked at other southern states, and Florida has one of the lowest 911 fees when compared to the others. Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, and Mississippi have rates between $1 and $1.75, while 911 centers across the U.S. are transitioning to what they call next generation or NG 911 services. At the current rate of 40 cents, there's limited possibility of establishing that in Florida. But just so you know, that's kind of what we wrote the last time in 2022.
Holly.
Yes.
Right here.
Sorry.
That is also a policy proposal submitted by a different county for FAC as well.
Yes.
So they're on that one.
Yeah, that's what I was mentioning, that is a policy proposal, and FAC is recommending adopting that one in particular. So you would have support from FAC this year going up to Tallahassee on this one. I don't know if those other southern states have increased their rates since 22, but that's what it was back in 22 for that. So that's another policy priority we were looking at. And also, the support and increased funding to programs for construction and improvement of trails and trail facilities. This is another FAC. They are looking for support. It had to do with trails, and I'll get it for you. That's the farm to market roads. They are, which one was it? Water environmental? Yes, here it is. It's under water and environmental sustainability. And the proposed policy support is for construction improvement and designation of additional trails for Floridians to increase accessibility between urban and rural areas. And FAC is recommending adoption of that one in particular. So I thought I'd add it here for consideration because trails are very important to Flagler County. Again, this is just a list. We can remove or add based on whatever it is. This is your priorities. And then the last two, we see them every year: maintain short-term vacation rental legislation, status quo, and then, of course, continue to advocate for home rule authority. Does anybody have any questions on those policy priorities? You want some added, you want changed, deleted? We can wait until after, well, that's cutting it close, but we could wait until after the policy conference if that's something you wanted, but.
Go ahead, Commissioner Sullivan.
Just as a note, on low-cost housing, I heard a new, in St. Johns County now, they've got a new program for low cost for veterans housing. And they've done it through some grants from the state. What they've done is they've bought an old motel and have like 22 units, and they're going to lease them, I guess, or sell them to veterans. I just mentioned that it's so hard to come up with anything new in that low-cost housing area where you get funding. They have done that, so that's just a thought that's going on.
Really good.
I'm good with them.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Good.
All right, thank you.
All right, well, we'll move on to the suggested funding priorities. Okay, last time we were here, we had 15 of them. We narrowed it down to 9. So I'm going to go over each one of the 9 that we have left, and I'll, again, try to go through them as quickly as I can. The first one we had talked about was the new headquarters for supervisor of elections. She was looking for 40,000 square feet. There were some questions that I left here with. We looked at several counties and similar population. We tried not to go backwards in population, but to go up from Flagler County. So you can see Indian Rivers here, Sumter, Citrus, and Martin. And we basically asked like a few questions. So do they have a separate building? As you know, our supervisor of elections is in the government building. So do they have a separate building, or are they part of the county? Do they have more than one location? What's their total square footage? And are they planning to expand in the next 5 years? And as you can see, the ones that were closest to us in population size would be Sumter County, and then after that would be Martin County. Sumter has a population of 151,565, registered voters of 125,149, and they have a total square footage of 45,000 square feet between 2 locations, and they are expecting to expand in 5 years. And then Martin County, which has a population over 163, and registered voters closer to us, 115, we have 95. They're separate from the county, and they only have 12,346 square feet, and they are expecting to expand in 5 years. I thought it was worthy to note about Indian River because they're almost 170,000 in population. They only have 1 location, and they have 20,000 square feet, and they're not planning on expanding in 5 years. So that's where we are. I did also, I think Commissioner Pennington, you had asked about possible expansion for the tax collector, and maybe that space would become available. I did talk to the incoming tax collector, Shelley Edmondson, and she indicated that, yes, they need space both here and in their Palm Coast office, but no, they have no immediate plans. So that's what I can tell you, what we did for research on this particular item per your request. Do you have any questions on that one in particular?
I just support it. A lot needs to be done to get some detail on exactly how we go about doing that, what's going to cost, and how much space is needed, that kind of thing.
So in the interest of
Really
time,
need
should we
it.
just decide as we go through them, or just let her go through? I would not read them all off, or?
I mean, let me know. I went over this one in particular because you asked me
Because you
to
had
do
more
certain
data.
research for it. I'm not going to go over all 9 because some of them are repeats.
Right.
But this one in particular, you asked for certain information.
I guess I didn't mind an overview, but not we don't think we have to go into detail with them, but do we, right, we talked about coming back to narrow
Yeah. I can go through them all.
top three, so.
I can go through them all, and then you tell me
Okay,
where you want to
let's do
go with
that.
them. Okay, sure. So the next one, I'm not going to go over it. It's the replace and construct a new fire station at the current location in Corona. We already discussed this one. Again, this is another repeat, Joint Facility Fire Station, Sheriff's District Office near Cody's Corner. The next one is co-location of a new Sheriff's District Office and a community and cultural center on county-owned land in the Barrier Island. Again, we already discussed this one. This is the construction of a countywide animal shelter. When we brought this back the last time, we talked about the Flagler Humane Society, but it was indicated that we want this to be a municipal and county-owned facility. So I brought it back. The picture is just a demonstration of...
You found a design already. Way to go.
I found a design already, yes. So this is just a demonstration of what a potential design could look like. Obviously, we'd have to find land, and the cost to construct 30,000 square feet would be about $15 million. And we know that's based on recent concerns that have been raised. We have also reached out to the 3 municipalities that already participate in the program, Bunnell, Flagler Beach, and City of Palm Coast, for support, an endorsement letter for this project and collaborating on this project. So we've done that. Okay, the next one is we've changed the title. As we discussed, we wanted to make it more about the trails, and it falls in line with our current policy priorities and what FAC and I think the state is looking to do. So it's called the Regional Trails and Conservation Center, and we talk more about the trail system within this. And I mentioned that this is it directly aligns with the FAC policy priority to support the improvements and construction of additional trails for Floridians. So I put that in there, and in talking to Amy Lukasik, the tourism director, they're looking for $3 million, not $10 million. So we've reduced that amount significantly. Did I go too fast? Let me see. Oh, all right. So this is the one we changed the title. So it's expansion of infrastructure along US 1 in support of economic development. And I do talk about that it does help with water quality as well, but the point of the improvements is to attract new business and to diversify the tax base. And I do mention in here about the that it has economic development, will not only foster innovation, technological advances, but will also lead to the creation of new industries and job opportunities. The price hasn't changed. Malacompra Canal restoration, design, and construction, this one has not changed. And then the last one is design. I changed the information on this one a little bit. So design and construction of the Black Branch North Drainage System to support and protect the area along Old Hall Creek Road. And in the end, you'll see that I talked about the future site of the Florida State Guard Training Facility, that this would not only alleviate flooding locally and improve water quality to the area along this road, which does include this new facility.
The only thing on the last one, along along Old Haw Creek Road, could we not have Old Haw Creek drainage basin or just something? The road turns me off only from a
Basin, it should be basin.
As specific, where we could make it
Basin.
Old
more
Haw Creek Basin?
inclusive of that basin. Is Old Haw Creek an OSW? Is it outstanding, or does it have a designation? I don't know.
No, it doesn't.
No.
I don't think so. It
Okay.
has a cleanup mandate.
Right.
So
I just thought that maybe some wordsmithing on that could make it a little bit more enticing or attractive.
Well, if you select this one, we'll definitely wordsmith it and bring it back.
True.
So
Okay.
that's the last one.
I have pictures to add to this from this past
Sure.
storm that I think would show, especially the impact on the state guard.
We have pictures from everywhere on the last storm. The last storm is not
I
really the
know.
one that you want to.
I just-
Okay, questions for Holly? Right, we want to narrow down, I think, top three, so everybody has an opportunity to talk about their projects. You want to go, Ms. Pennington?
Well, no, I wanted to bring up, if anybody looked at Chris Doolan's email in the attachment, that the legislator had their financial outlook, and they showed a deficit in 2026 of 2.8 billion and a deficit in 2027 of 6.9 billion, just funding at the current funding from the state. And the state recommendation from the state was that they have to address the deficits that are coming up in this year's budget surplus, and that the legislative ask will not be funded. They're just not going to fund them next year. It's going to be very selective in what goes in front of them. So I think some of the bigger projects with the millions, I just don't see it. We had a speaker, we did our best, and I really think, in my opinion, that we go back with the Black Branch and the Malacompra and the economic development of the water project.
Because they're smaller?
Well, I call the water project life-changing for Flagler County if packaged properly, and we assume Senator Leak, would be there, understanding of it. It would be a dramatic change for us if it was implemented. But after witnessing what happened out at Black Branch this past storm, I can't imagine. I mean, I see that as a priority project, and I think stormwater is a priority project that we don't have any funding for. And
I'll
those
just
projects
remind
are-
the commissioners that the governor vetoed all water projects last year.
Yeah, that was the one thing that bothered me, is unless we're gonna show, even like on the what's the trail center now, if some of them could show in kind what we're doing on our side, that might help push them through, but we don't
I
have
feel like
anything on
Black
the water
Branch
ones.
has an argument that it has an impact to the state in the terms of the state guard operation, I feel like you can really make a valid argument for the Old Hall Creek one. So that's my, at least that one. I don't know, I don't know all the particulars about the Malacompra and what it would do, but I do feel like the Black Branch is something that they would understand.
You could make a case for that one with the state guard facility.
That's what I'm saying. You really build that into, we need this, this is what you're going to be faced with to some degree. And I feel like the water project is just a necessity to go back up there for. I don't know why is the funding back at 22 million, or was always 22 million?
Yeah, it was.
And he came in at half.
Yeah, 10.1.
And then he vetoed it. But we put that in as affordable housing as a reasoning, and I could see why they didn't really understand it. But I feel like if you bring in the 95 interchange, plus you have soon to be Senator Leak there, who lives in that area and would understand this project, and maybe it would have a better breath of life back into it. And I think it's life-changing to Flagler County. That's what I think. The third project, I could argue that, given the recent developments, the animal shelter is going to be something we're just going to keep having issues. We're going to have to talk about it,
You don't think there'll be a $20 million appropriation for that?
For the animal shelter or the?
Yeah.
I think that's I don't feel like I don't know what we're basing that on. I don't think about the other municipalities, but they take in 300 animals a year for us, which is about 25 a month. But we don't have a plan of who would operate it or funding for it. But I still think if you even take out the issues that we're having with animal control at the present moment, you still have a statute that says you must conduct animal control, and you have one nonprofit in town that says they have no plan for your growth. So don't understand how you're not going to be faced down the road with an issue on where to put animals and how to handle animal control. So I don't know. That one's a conundrum.
Commissioner Hanson.
Well, I would agree with her recommendation, Leanne's recommendation for those three. The Malacompra Canal, it's pretty easy to show that it's the main drainage for that whole part of the Outer Banks out there. And it's failing. So that would be but I agree with all three that Ms. Pennington put forth. I think we should go with them.
Do we have a good sales pitch similar to the Black Branch as it supports the state guard? Is there a similar pitch for Malacambra?
Well, you can talk
'Cause
about
it
how
got
many
denied
homes will
last
flood.
year. It
How
got
many?
denied last year,
I
though.
know.
It did.
Maybe we'd start talking about how many homes would flood if it's blocked.
Well, you're gonna have lots of those, I bet, this year.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. All right, Commissioner Sullivan.
Yeah, I just wanted to speak up. I understand those three projects, and they all are very valid. The new headquarters for supervisor of elections, I think that would have to be, the pitch has to be, that would be a joint, like you were saying, and this would not be, we're asking for the whole chunk of money this year. It would have to be that we need to expand our voting capability here in the county. It is something that the state legislature would tend to agree with when it comes to the elections and making sure we've got enough capability to do them correctly. I think the way to handle that right now is the sales pitch, the actual way you put that program together, and that we know it's our responsibility, but there probably is maybe some state money available to help us, seed money to get that program started. I don't know. I
Well,
think there's a way to do it.
Yeah, I think we need a little bit better homework on that too.
Yeah.
You know, how much land is it going to take? What's it going to cost to buy the land?
Move.
How big a building do we want and where?
I think I won't be here, but for the county, I think that's one of those ones that's going to take some effort over the next few years to get moving.
Yeah. I think if we ask for money this year, it's a little premature. I mean, we'd like to have the money, but I don't think we have a picture yet of what we want.
I think it's got to be a good
Yeah.
sales pitch. Okay, that's my, but
Commissioner O'Brien? Okay.
It's a bad idea.
Yes, Ms. Petito.
With the Black Branch project, I think that there's going to be some level of coordination with City of Bunnell because you're talking about a project that's going to take place within city limits. It's not in unincorporated Flagler. So I just think if that's going to be one of our items, that we need to work in tandem with the city to ensure that it doesn't conflict with something they're already working on. That's all.
Well, we have one project on our CIP, right, for Black Branch? And is this that project, or is there additional work that we want to accomplish? If you
I'm
want to
gonna
go back
have
to that item.
Hamid come up.
Was it on there as a result of that drainage study that we did?
Not to mention, but Hog Creek holds all that flow back from, right, St. John's River and, right?
Would this project have stopped the road from flooding with 20 inches of rain in 7 days?
The Old Home project?
Yes, the Old Hawk Creek Black Branch.
Yeah, that that is a upstream basically measure to capture the water basically east of Old Hawk Creek, that pond that is being
Right.
planned. So yeah, definitely would have prevent flooding, but it's not a guarantee. With, like you say, 20-inch event, 200, 500-year event, that is a
But it
this
is
has been
designed to
very
take some of that
unusual.
capacity from the system. So it is a preventative measure. Would it help the area? Would this be able to help the drainage issues that surround the state guard facility that's proposed? Would it?
Yes, absolutely. The state
Okay.
guard is also on the east side
Right.
of Old Hawk Creek.
Right.
So this measure would help all that.
Okay, just
Yeah.
checking. But yes, if we need to work with the city of Bunnell, definitely.
Okay, so consensus to add Black Branch Hall Creek,
I like that one only because I think we can sell it.
probably.
as much as I would want to do Malacompra, I don't know how successful we'll be second time around with limited funds. But that's not to say it's not a good project. It is.
We didn't talk about the sheriff's district office. Does anybody feel the sheriff's district office project?
Well, it always helps if you can get the sheriff to work with you on a project.
I have a problem. I think we're going to have a problem. We're going to butt up with the cultural center portion of it. But
Do either of the fire station projects help with insurance for the people in those areas? Corona already has a voluntary station and the joint facility off of Coney's Quarter. Does that help with our rating and lower insurance?
I don't know what, without having input from fire rescue, I don't know what credit they get for a volunteer station because it's not manned.
Right.
I would think that a manned station would probably serve you better than a volunteer. And then Cody's Corner, there isn't a station there now, so
Right.
it would improve that for those folks down there.
I'm our expert.
Say that again, Don?
The real impact for the insurance, for homeowners insurance, would be the station has to be within 5 road miles or less.
Okay.
But there also needs, the other part of that is there needs to be a water source within 1,000 feet or less. Hydrant, or I guess the pond with the hydrant in it, dry hydrant.
So there's no water utility at Corona because they have a well.
They have a well and a fill station out back.
Okay. Nothing at Cody's Corner yet.
Nothing, no.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how you pick one of those. I mean, I'm okay trying again on the economic development front for, like, again, I think the point you made with Mr. Leake's familiarity with the area and also the interchange expansion are good points to sell with that, especially on an economic development side. The rest of them, I don't know that we'd have.
well, the animals, I hate this. I mean, the animal shelter is a large number put on there that
Right.
I'm not sure that is necessary to
We'd
start.
have to come in
you
with
know?
a match on that or something to
Well,
sell that.
and I'm not sure like we needed that much to begin with, or I don't know. We haven't had discussions with other municipalities. If it'd be different. But we're gonna have a problem in the future if we don't have a place to put animals.
No, it's going to get
Yeah.
worse. Yeah.
But I don't know if that's this year or is, and I hate to take on more capital projects because quite honestly,
We have several on our plate right now.
Well, but they're
But-
getting done.
Excuse me?
Getting done.
They're getting done, yeah.
I mean, we could go with, we're not limited to 3, we could go with 4, I just,
Just a question on the
I'll leave it
expansion
to
of
you
infrastructure long run. Have we coordinated with FGUA on that at all?
Yes. Well, we worked with them last year when this was on the
Maybe they have some
funding request.
political push they could help with on that. I don't know.
Thought
And
they
maybe
were
we
applying
change
for
it too
grant.
to where if we're able to allocate potential grant funding and reduce the cost, I don't know.
We
I'm just
still
trying to
have
think
the
of-
outstanding grant request on this one through
Mhm.
DEP. I haven't heard on it, so at this point, we also have 3 outstanding grant requests for stormwater design and construction. So we have 4 grant requests still outstanding with DEP. But this one in particular, if we get the grant, we will no longer need the legislative request. But I can't tell you that today. I looked and there's no update at this point.
I think you said it, but is 22 million still the right number?
What we requested from them, we requested on the grant, 27 million. 22 is what was indicated by FGUA. But I think when we did the grant, we expanded the area a little bit more, and it came out to 27 million.
Okay, thank you.
I'll probably be the only one that likes, the old Eco Center regional trails, especially if there was a cost share that went with that. But I just don't know that that's going to get much traction either. But does support with the different FAC policies, and they've been putting money into trails and conservation, but not necessarily for this type of, the money's been going toward preservation, not necessarily education.
The legislature did support it last year.
Yeah.
But the governor vetoed it, so.
Right.
I support you on that one. I do. And the original thought about the fact, it's a little bit of a scare tactic, I think, on the part of the state on the funding. Every year for the last two or 3 years, they've been saying, we're not going to take in as much money as we thought we were going to take in, blah, blah, blah. And every year they've taken in a lot more. Now, I know the economy may be not exactly as good as it was, but I don't think that item alone should not scare us off for asking.
I'm going to go Fire Station Corona. Infrastructure on US 1 and then Black Branch.
Well, I'm fine with that. And maybe we add a fourth project in case they get their grant funding here, and we go with the sheriff's district office and give him the lift on advocating for that.
Okay.
There's 2 sheriff district office. Which one were you referring to?
Cody's Corner, right? Cody's Corner or Hammond?
Cody's Corner? You wanna just look like we were guessing, but
Cody's
I
or
was
the
going to say,
barrier?
when you said Corona, I was going to
Your
say,
area.
I feel like Cody's Corner, the argument can be made because of what Bunnell has instituted over there for growth, and the transportation says it's going to be an urban corridor, and it's got a lot of bells and
All
whistles
I'll
to
say
it.
is that you guys are going to have to be up there in Tallahassee supporting
That's all right.
these. I won't be there. I just like to see some way to get that the Supervisor of Elections Office project started, because it's going to take a long time to get that done. So I don't know what that means, if it's policy versus building, or at least tap into whatever is going on in Tallahassee about election offices and that whole election Department of State, and the whole election process. Get something moving there with the idea that it'll take 2 or 3 years to get it done. So I know that's, like you're tilting at windmills maybe a little bit there, but I don't think we should ignore that right now.
I think with, as we look at maybe an exercise we undertake with the new members coming on is some long-range planning, because we got big issues, and we got to figure out a way to tackle them.
So on the fire station, you think the Corona is the one to go for, rather than the district office?
It's your area, right, down there? But I'm partial to Corona. I mean, I know that's a volunteer one now.
The sheriff's district office, I overlooked this part. The one in Malacomp, or near Malacomp, or the Barrier Island, it would also double as a community center for rentals, so like an economic component to it. And he's asking for that specifically, right? Or their office was, because they need storage for marine.
When we, if you recall, when
One
we
on the
met
island.
with the city of Palm
I think
Coast and we were
that's
talking about the impact fees collected for law enforcement, working with the sheriff and his staff, we had identified certain projects that we would need to fund and construct at some point. Right now, they're located on Malacomper in an old building. We had talked about the desire to be somewhere on the intercoastal so that they could house their marine unit there. And it would give them a more professional, public-facing facility that wouldn't be on a side road.
Yeah, my guess is he would have a higher priority for that one.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Maybe we do the Corona Fire Station, the Sheriff's District Office, and Community Center on the Barrier Island. The Economic Development Expansion of Water, and then Hall Creek.
Sounds good to me.
Those 4?
And I think before we submit the forms, we just go over them and make sure we have everything. Because I think some of you might have things to add to it that she can submit to the state. pictures, letters of support, whatever we can gather on some of these projects to help out, or thoughts, maybe like thoughts we have.
The House forms won't be due until February.
Okay.
I will bring these back to you with the policy priorities just for final approval in November, probably late November. And then hopefully we can get the unified agenda done. I've notified all the municipalities by mid to late December.
One of the things I think we should do is after, before that, we should maybe meet on in person here with our senator and representatives prior to going up for legislation day. We should start working with them on these projects or getting them familiar with them.
Well, we do
There will be a delegation meeting.
Yeah, but I think even, yeah, maybe after that, then we'll,
sometimes they have a little more time that day aside,
Yeah.
but, you know.
Right.
that can-
We had going to be two new guys.
True guys.
yeah.
So could you restate the four?
Oh.
Black Branch,
Black Branch, yeah.
Economic Development, Utilities,
The expansion
Yep.
along US
the
1.
Joint Sheriff, and the Hammock.
And then
Corona.
Cody's Corner or Corona?
Corona.
Corona, okay. I got it.
We shared them around the county.
But I do want to say something because I think we need more planning on the animal shelter. I do think we have got to work on that. We don't stop. You know, we start saying, what does that look like, you know, for expansion? You know, so either we go back on this year or next year for that, or we start working on a plan locally for.
It's the same with the SOE. I mean, we've got to do some.
Yeah,
gotta do
that's what I'm
some
saying.
homework.
Yeah,
There's
some
these two.
long-range plan.
Long-range plan, those two.
Get it moving like we do. Takes time.
Thank
All right,
you.
at this time, I'll open it up for public comment. Anybody wish to address our legislative priorities on public comment? All right, seeing none, we'll close public comment. That does it for our business today. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.